You too, if you want wine, I have a lot here. Luffy took Nami and Vivi, and the fast-running duck Karoo to the two giants who were still lying on the ground. It's you. I was just about to invite you to eat dinosaur meat. I didn't expect the volcano to erupt. Dory, who was lying on the ground, saw Luffy 3 and a duck, and immediately recognized it. After all, he had just seen it. Yeah, we've been dueling for 100 years under the name of a volcanic eruption, but we haven't decided yet. When the giant lying on the other side heard that it was someone Dory knew, they also had a hearty conversation. By the way, my name is Dory, he is Brogy, since you know me, you should know him too? Luffy nodded in response. By the way, you said you had alcohol? For Luffy just said that he has a lot of wine, the two giants are happy at the same time. That's right, the two guests Brogy met before were supposed to be my crew members, and I still have a lot of wine on board. Although Nami and Vivi felt strange, they did not ask aloud. From the look of Luffy, it was obvious that he wanted to trade with these two giants by using alcohol. Oh, so the woman with the long nose and the strange hat is your crew member? Are you pirates too? Dory and Brogy seemed to be resting, and they both sat up from the ground at the same time. Yes, we are indeed pirates. My name is Monkey D. Luffy. This time I am here mainly to meet the two of you. No need to hide it, Luffy said straight to the two giants. Looking for us? We've been on this island for more than 100 years. Based on your human age, we shouldn't be someone we know. For Luffy's statement, the two giants are obviously very puzzled. But the giants are not good at intrigue, so there is no doubt that Luffy will be against them. I want to see Elbaf's strongest gun, and I would be very grateful if you two would teach me about it. Luffy looked directly into the huge eyes of the two giants and said his intentions. As soon as Luffy's words came out, the scene instantly fell silent. Dory and Brogy never expected to hear the ancient name of Elbaf's most powerful gun from a human mouth. For the two of them, in the duel of more than 100 years, they have never used this trick. Therefore, even they were obviously stunned when they suddenly heard Luffy say this move. Humans, Elbaf's spear is a stunt of the giants, and it is impossible for humans to learn it. Even our giants, there are only a handful of people who can use this trick. Dory and Brogy said a word, their huge eyes looking directly at Luffy. Movements are not limited to races. Even Luffy, if he does learn Elbaf's gun, will definitely improve. In any case, there is no doubt that Elbaf's gun is more suitable for giants. What Luffy wants to learn is nothing more than the power-generating skills of this trick and how to use it. The original koala can learn the Murloc karate of the Murlocs, so there is no reason why you can't learn this trick. Any physical skills should have something in common, and the giants are nothing more than a little bigger than humans, so the threshold should be lower in this regard. What a brave man. But we won't easily pass on the stunts of the giants to a human. Hearing the giant's answer, Nami's heart tightened. Such an answer is equivalent to rejecting Luffy, so, what will Luffy do? Maybe you will change your mind. Luffy smiled, ignoring Dory and Brogy's rejection. After all, on this island, in addition to these people, there are others. The wine will be delivered immediately. Oh. Are you still willing to give us a drink even if we refuse it? What a generous man. The two giants were obviously surprised to hear that Luffy was still willing to offer drinks. Luffy just smiled and took Nami and Vivi back in the direction of the Mary. Just after Luffy and Nami Vivi left together, the two giants who were about to get up found themselves unable to move. What's the matter? Did that human do it just now? Looking down at your feet, a layer of white material completely wraps the feet that support the body and the buttocks sitting on the ground. The two giants moved vigorously, trying to break free from the bundle of white matter. However, I found that this layer of material was extremely hard, and I couldn't break free at all. Seeing that the two giants struggled to no avail, they immediately thought it was Luffy's move. Ho ho ho, I finally got this opportunity, otherwise I might not be able to get that man here. Just behind the two giants on the back of the stone, a man and a little girl came out. The man, with a cup of coffee in his hand and wearing a white vest, was speaking to the two giants in a leisurely manner. And his hair was strangely tied into a 3-character. Damn it, who are you? Seeing the figure walking out, the two giants finally knew who bound them. Sure enough, how could such a bold man do such a thing? Although Luffy's request was rejected, it is clear that Luffy's previous performance has been recognized by the two giants. Hee hee, no matter how daring you are, you can't get what you want, you're just a brainless brat. For Luffy, although he knew that the other party had defeated Mr. 5, in Mr. 3's view, the other party was still just a little devil with some strength. After all, Mr. 5 is just a waste in his eyes. Isn't this coming out? I thought you would continue to endure? The three of Luffy, who had already left, came back from the direction they left. Luffy's observation haki was always on, and Mr. 3, who was hiding on the side, could possibly hide it from Luffy. Your so-called mind, in the face of absolute strength, can't be on the table. Luffy Lord. Didn't you go back and get the wine? The two giants were obviously a little surprised to the three of Luffy who went back and forth, and for a while they forgot to continue their struggle. If I don't leave, why would anyone jump out in a hurry? Little devil, are you kidding me? How did he find himself when he was clearly hiding out of the sight of the other party? The coffee in his hand was no longer in the mood to drink, so Mr. Point 3 threw the cup away. I was just pretending to be in front of others, but I was slapped in the face with my backhand. Mr. 3 was a little furious. At this moment, the little girl standing next to Mr. Point 3 suddenly picked up the drawing board and wanted to draw something. Don't be stupid, little sister. The ability to suggest is still quite weird, and Luffy has no intention of trying it out himself. Now that he knew the ability of the other party, after seeing the little girl's movements, he looked at the other party with dangerous eyes. The little girl who was startled by Luffy's eyes shook her hand holding the paintbrush and almost dropped the paintbrush on the ground. Since you found out, let's just solve it with you. In Mr. 3's mind, since Blue Ogre Dory and Red Ghost Brogy, who offered a reward of 100 million Bailey, couldn't earn the wax made by their wax fruit. Then, Luffy, who only offered a reward of 90 million Bailey, naturally couldn't earn it. Luffy looked at Mr. Point 3 with interest. Wax fruit and Katakuri's waxy fruit are quite similar. But the waxy glutinous fruit is said as a special paramecia by WT, while the wax fruit is just an ordinary creation system in paramecia devil fruit. Luffy is a little confused. Candle shackles. While Luffy was still thinking, Mr. 3 took the lead. I saw that Mr. 3's hands suddenly turned into things like the white matter that bound Dory and Brogy. However, unlike binding the two giants, the white substance his hands turned into was in the form of a flowing liquid. And the white matter that bound the two giants has solidified into a solid. His hands can be turned into wax, or is it the creation system? Luffy is speechless. Maybe it's just that Mr. Point 3 wasn't developed enough, or maybe it's another Katakuri. Watching Mr. 3's hands turn into flowing white wax, he quickly threw out a lump. This lump of white wax that was thrown out quickly changed in the air, and soon formed a shackled appearance. However, the shackles are still in a softened state because they have not yet been bound. Watching the shackles go straight to him to prevent Luffy from dodging. The shackles formed by the white wax hit Luffy's feet without hindrance, and then quickly solidified into a solid state the moment it locked Luffy's feet. HMPH, brazen brat, even with a bounty of 90 million Bailey, I still won't get caught by me. Seeing that Luffy was hit by his own candle shackles, Mr. 3 finally let out a bad breath. I don't feel so angry anymore about being put together by Luffy before. Lord Luffy. X2, Mr. Luffy. The two giants and Vivi saw that Luffy was directly trapped by each other, and immediately shouted anxiously. Nami didn't say anything. After all, he had seen the duel between Luffy and Hawkeye. Hearing the uncle with the weird hairstyle just now say that his move is a candle shackle, it should be the devil fruit ability of candles. Since it is a candle, it means that it will be melted by fire, and the ability that Luffy has shown before is the Fire Fist gun. Besides, at Luffy's speed, it should be easy to avoid Mr. 3's attack. Since Luffy didn't dodge it, he must have some ideas. So, Nami wasn't worried about Luffy being trapped by the other party. The wax made by your wax fruit is not bad. How about it? Do you want to consider coming to my boat? I felt the strength of the candle shackles on my feet, and with Luffy's strength, I really couldn't break free without using haki. And it doesn't have the soft texture of ordinary candles. It's no wonder that Zoro, who has not reached the realm of cutting iron in the original book, can't cut this candle. Stinky boy. What nonsense are you talking about? Now that you were caught by me, if you want to ask for mercy, let's put it another way. Catch? Are all your Baroque workers so naive? Luffy's words made Mr. 3, who was still secretly happy, stunned. Do you think Marine's bounty was set at random? Don't look at the two giants Dory and Brogy who offered a reward of 100 million Bailey now can't win Mr. 3's candle, but that is when they are exhausted. Do you really think that fighting between two giants is a game? Stinky boy, don't be rude, look at my candle shackles. Mr. 3, who was caught by the tone of Luffy's words, waved his hands that turned into flowing candles again. This time the candle shackles flew towards Luffy's hands. Now that you have seen Mr. 3's candle, there is no need to keep his hands locked by him. Watching the candle shackles approaching, Luffy covered armament haki with his right hand. With a slight trembling of the arm, a layer of flame quickly wrapped around Haki's right hand. The candle shackles flying in the air have not yet completely solidified, and it is estimated that the effect of direct attack will not be very good, so Luffy decisively chose to use fire to melt the candle. When the flames appeared in Luffy's hands, Mr. 3, who was full of confidence, suddenly changed his face. Apparently, Luffy still had the ability to use fire. The candle shackle quickly melted and fell to the ground the first time it touched Luffy's flame-wrapped right fist. Luffy pushes his feet, armament haki shifts from his right hand to his feet. Click, after solidification, the extremely hard candle shattered in Mr. 3's shocked eyes. Mr. 3, what to do, we can't seem to beat him. The little girl who has been inactive because of Luffy's words is Mr. 3's partner Miss Golden Week. After seeing that Luffy easily broke free from Mr. 3's candle shackles, he timidly said to Mr. 3, and at the same time, his body slowly moved behind Mr. 3. Idiot, it's not because you were frightened by others at first, now use your ability to try it out, and I'll restrain him. Looking at Miss Golden Week hiding behind him, Mr. 3 could only prepare himself to go straight on. Candle Champion's Cup. Mr. 3 shouted loudly, and countless white wax suddenly spewed out from his waxy hands, and then quickly wrapped him. Luffy didn't stop either, just waiting for his transformation to complete. Miss Golden Week, help me get dressed up. Mr. 3, whose whole body except his head was wrapped in candles, shouted to Miss Golden Week. I saw Miss Golden Week, who was called out, swaying the paintbrush continuously. And Mr. 3's original pure white candle armor was also painted with red paint on various parts. Who? Stinky boy, although you can break free from my candle shackles, I am invincible under the wrapping of this Candle Champion Cup. After wearing this candle condensed armor, Mr. 3 felt completely different. Originally, he thought of letting Miss Golden Week solve Luffy with his paint ability, but now he feels that he can completely defeat Luffy. Maybe this is the romance of men. However, Luffy doesn't think his armor is good looking, and feels that this kind of robot-like thing in the pirate world is a bit sloppy. Looking at the confident Mr. 3, Luffy wondered if there was something wrong with these people's IQs. Now that he has seen that he has the ability to release flames, he can also directly break his candle. So what's the point of equipping a candle armor now? The key is that you still look so confident after you equip it. Luffy is really speechless. Championa A. Plow Field Fist. The confident Mr. Point 3 swung the part of the armor that looked like a boxing glove and rushed towards Luffy. The ability is almost understood, and there is no need to continue wrangling with him. Having said so much, I just want to know what exactly is going on with Wax Fruit. However, looking at the way Mr. Point 3 uses it now, I can't see anything. It seems that he can only turn his arm into a candle, and then use the arm that turns into a candle to make things. As for the others, maybe it's because it's not developed enough, or maybe Wax Fruit can only do so much. Luffy can't see it. After all, Devil Fruit's ability is really puzzling. Armament Haki covered Armament Haki with his right hand again, and looking at the candle fist that kept waving towards him, Luffy was not polite and punched it out. Click, Luffy's right fist directly hit Mr. 3's constantly waving candle glove. Then, in Mr. 3's terrified eyes, the candle glove on the candle armor he made that was in contact with Luffy's right fist shattered. This is not over yet, as the glove ruptures, the crack continues to spread. The sound of caw-caw kept coming, and finally, the armor condensed from the candle completely shattered. The fragments all fell to the ground with a da-da sound. On the side, Miss Golden Week, who wanted to wait for the opportunity to use the pigment hint ability on Luffy. When Mr. Point 3 fell to the ground, his eyes stopped moving. Luffy didn't kill Mr. 3, or Luffy didn't damage Mr. Point 3 at all. That punch was just aimed at the candle armor. The candle that could trap us was smashed into pieces with one punch. The giant Dory, who was still trapped by Mr. 3, looked at Luffy in surprise. While he and Brogy in their heyday can indeed break away from this hard candle, it won't be easy either. Is that Haki? As the captains of the former giant soldier pirates, the two naturally knew about Haki. When Luffy used the fire fist just now, he didn't see it because of the flame, and his feet just thought Luffy was powerful. But now looking at Luffy's punch that hit Mr. 3, it was clearly covered with a layer of armament Haki's power. Dory and Brogy looked at each other and fell silent. How about it? Do you want to be my crew member? You and this girl are still very capable. Looking at Mr. Point 3 who fell to the ground and Miss who was standing blankly during Golden Week, Luffy once again proposed to let them on board. Mr. 3's Wax Fruit has similar characteristics to Wax Fruit, and further development may be able to do what Wax Fruit can do. And Miss Golden Week, her ability is not Devil Fruit's power. Can such a hinting ability go a step further, and through hints, let the power of Master Haki be made? After all, Haki is an innate power in human beings, and it is not impossible to channel this power through suggestion. If it can be done, then this girl's ability will be very valuable. Hey, Luffy, why did you just invite the enemy aboard? Hearing Luffy's words, it was not Mr. Point 3 and Miss Golden Week who were invited to react first. It was Nami, who had been staying with Vivi all the time. Nami couldn't understand Luffy's invitation to the hostile forces once again. Could it be that Luffy can really see into the hearts of others? Otherwise, how can we ensure that these invited people will not betray or make small moves? Want us to join your pirate group? Don't be stupid. Even if we promise, Mr. O will not let us go, and you will be killed by him because of this. For Luffy's re-invitation, Mr. 3 still did not agree. Although the opponent can easily defeat him, Mr. 3 still doesn't think Luffy can compete with the Baroque Work Club. In terms of number of people, the Straw Hat Pirates have already been destroyed by the Baroque Work Club. Not to mention the Baroque Work Society and the big boss Mr. Zero. Although Luffy's bounty is as much as 90 million, even if it is a pirate of over 100 million, the Baroque Works has solved a lot. It seems that you are in awe of your mysterious president. Is Crocodile strong? There's no doubt about that, at least for anyone who doesn't know hockey, Logia Devil Fruit is invincible. Even if you know how to restrain Sand Fruit, do you expect someone who can't even hockey can beat Crocodile with water? Is it true that the pirates of Crocodile for so many years are for nothing? Moreover, Sand Fruit is not Smoke Fruit, the attack power of the two is not the same grade. But does this matter to Luffy? Crocodile may be unmatched for ordinary people, but for Luffy, it is not much more difficult to deal with than Smoker. But it doesn't matter if you don't agree. I will definitely take this girl away. Her abilities are very valuable. Hey, Luffy. Luffy's once again made Nami frazzled. Although Luffy said that he wanted to let the girl on board because of the opponent's ability, Nami just felt very uncomfortable. What's more, how old is this girl? Even if the other party is an agent of the Baroque Work Club, Nami doesn't really want to have such a small person on the ship to become a pirate together. While Nami cried out, Vivi also looked at Luffy with a weird look. Hearing Nami's dissatisfaction and the strange look in Vivi's eyes, Luffy felt that he shouldn't have brought them here. Miss Golden Week, who was named by Luffy, took 2 steps back as if frightened. Miss Golden Week didn't know whether to resist Luffy's direct desire to bring himself to the pirate ship. After all, he has thin arms and thin legs. If Luffy really forcibly took him on the boat, it would be completely impossible for him to escape in Luffy's hands. Hey, don't go too far, Miss Golden Week is only 16 years old. Seeing that Luffy didn't seem to want to let go of his partner, Mr. 3 immediately yelled at Luffy. You also know that she is only 16 years old, so how did she become your partner? Regarding Mr. 3's questioning, Luffy retorted without hesitation. I'm really bothering you, Lord Luffy. Dory and Brogy, who were rescued by Luffy from Mr. 3's candle, thanked Luffy. As for Mr. Point 3 and Miss Golden Week, they are sitting on the stone next to them. Even if Luffy didn't do anything to them, the two didn't dare to act rashly for the time being. Judging from the strength of Luffy's punch that shattered his own candle of the Champions Cup just now, if the punch hit him directly, Mr. 3 would probably be gone. Since the matter is settled, then you can come with me, and the wine is still on my boat. It's just a few barrels of wine, just give it to them. And, even if they don't teach themselves the Elbaf gun, it's no big deal. As for you two, come with us. Luffy took another look at Mr. Point 3 and Miss Golden Week, who were staying honest, then turned around and prepared to go to the Mary. Luffy, please wait. Just as Luffy turned around, Dory and Brogy looked at each other and stopped Luffy at the same time. Nami and Vivi, who were about to follow Luffy back, paused and looked at the two giants. Luffy turned his head and looked at them both calmly, and could roughly guess what they wanted to say. Lord Luffy saved both of our lives. We are both very grateful. We can teach you of the Elbaf gun of the giant family, but whether you can learn it depends on Luffy himself. Sure enough, the giant family is indeed like this. The two giants who guarded the Enies lobby in the original book, after Usopp told them about the Blue Ogre, were able to turn their backs and help Luffy. When he arrived at the Blue Ogre Red Ghost, he was equivalent to saving the lives of two people, and it was reasonable to be able to agree to his request. It doesn't matter, the two willing to teach is enough for me, as for whether I can learn it or not, that's my own business. Since Charlotte Linlin can learn, there is no reason why he can't. Luffy still has some understanding of his talent. In that case, let us first tell you the principle of Elbaf's gun. As for the wine, it's not too late for us to finish talking about it, otherwise the wine will be unnatural. Dory and Brogy said a word, seeing Luffy agree, and the body that was about to get up sat down again. Luffy also found a stone next to him and sat down, ready to listen to the explanation of the two. Seeing that the two giants agreed to Luffy's previous request, Nami breathed a sigh of relief. Although according to the situation just now, Luffy should have no problem against these two giants, but it is better not to fight if he can. A relieved Nami sat down next to Luffy, and Vivi followed Nami and sat next to Nami. The duck, seeing the three of them sitting down, also wanted to lean against Luffy and sit next to Luffy, but Luffy kicked him directly next to Mr. 3. Karoo got up from the ground and yelled at Luffy in dissatisfaction. Then he glanced at Mr. 3 who was sitting there obediently, and with a pout, he pushed Mr. 3 aside for a distance. Fortunately, Miss Golden Week sits farther away, otherwise, with her petite size, it is estimated that she will be pushed down directly. Mr. Luffy, don't bully Karoo. Vivi next to Nami saw this and complained to Luffy. And Mr. 3, who was pushed aside, glared at the duck sitting next to him, but he didn't dare to attack, he could only endure it silently. Seeing Luffy sit down, Dory and Brogy directly talked about the principle of Elbaf's gun regardless of whether anyone else was present. It's not that they believe in the human who trapped them just now, but in their opinion, the Elbaf spear of the giants is not something that everyone can learn. Even among the giants, not everyone can use it, let alone humans. If you can learn the strongest spear of the giants by listening to them across the boundaries of races, then the spear of Elbaf will not be a stunt unique to the giants. What's more, that Mr. 3 doesn't look like a human with extraordinary talent at all. So Dory and Brogy didn't have any intentions to hide. Even Luffy, they didn't think they could learn. It doesn't take much time to tell the principle, and Luffy understands the key after listening to it once. What's missing is the actual experience. But Luffy is not stupid, and naturally he won't let them face him now. Not to mention that Nami is still here, how could she accept Luffy's unreasonable behavior? Besides, even without Nami, Luffy wouldn't have tried it out himself. The so-called feeling, although picking this up is the easiest to feel, but Luffy doesn't need to do it to this extent. Luffy just wanted to see the effect of this trick in action. And the island-eating beasts near this island have always existed. I believe that the giants will not just leave it alone when Luffy leaves, and let Luffy and others solve it by themselves. Since it's over, let's go, let's have a banquet here with the two of you. Luffy stood up again, pulled Nami up too, then looked at the two giants and said. One thing to say, one thing, sitting next to a giant is really difficult, and you have to raise your head to say anything. Since it's a banquet, let's go hunt a few dinosaurs first. There is only wine at the banquet, how can we do without meat? Gia. Brogy is right, Lord Luffy, you go first, we will follow soon, Brogy has just seen where your ship is parked. The two giants were also pirates before, and they were quite happy about the banquet that Luffy said. After all, the two of them have been fighting on the island, and it has been a long time since the last banquet. If that's the case, then let's go first. Luffy did not refuse, they were the hosts of this little garden, and since they had seen where the Mary was parked, they naturally wouldn't get lost. Speaking of getting lost, I don't know where Zoro is now, I hope Sanji can meet him. On the other side of Little Garden, it is a polar area with the Mary. Zoro is dragging a huge dinosaur around. Suddenly, I felt a tingling sensation in my nose, and I couldn't help sneezing. In the candle room where Mr. 3 and the others were on standby, Sanji was talking on the phone with a man with a gloomy voice. At Sanji's feet, a bird and a hase were rolling their eyes and passing out. Several drawing boards were shattered one by one in the corner of the wall, and it could be seen from the slightly intact part that it was a portrait of Luffy and the others. Luffy, you're finally back. As soon as he came to the Mary, Usopp cried and jumped off the Mary. Apparently something terrible happened to Usopp after Luffy and the others left. But it can't be said to be a terrible thing, after all, it is only a giant family. Sure enough, Usopp, who jumped down, immediately used his exaggerated tone to tell the story of seeing Brogy before. But after seeing the wine on the Mary, he asked for a few barrels of wine and ignored us, and then after the eruption of the volcano in the middle, he went there. Aren't you too timid? How can you become a brave sea warrior like this? Nami ruthlessly ridiculed Usopp's tricks. Yes. If you have the ability, don't follow, Luffy. Sneered at Nami's jeers, don't think you can't see it, you'd be nothing but a coward if Luffy wasn't around all the time. Usopp thought so, and then said so too, and then the consequences are of course needless to say. Boom, the world is quiet. Ha ha ha, you are so funny with a long nose. Brogy, who came back with a dinosaur, laughed when he saw Usopp being beaten to the ground by Nami. Ha. Ha ha. Why did you come back? Usopp, who was playing dead on the ground, got up from the ground immediately after hearing Brogy's voice. After seeing the figure about 20 meters tall, he immediately ran behind Luffy. Dory and I are here to attend Lord Luffy's banquet. Long nose, you must have something special to be invited by Lord Luffy on board. To be invited on board by someone like Luffy, in Brogy's view, the other party obviously has something special. Ahahaha. That's of course, I didn't expect you to be quite discerning. Usopp, who was still hiding behind Luffy and was afraid to die, changed his fear when he heard such a tall giant complimenting him. Immediately jumped out from behind Luffy and responded with a sullen face. Ha ha ha, you were really funny. It can be said that a big talker like Usopp is a dimensionality reduction blow to a simple-minded creature. Looking at Usopp, who was already sitting on Brogy's shoulders and chatting with Brogy, Nami and Vivi were dumbfounded. Hey, Mr. 3, Miss. Golden Week, why are you here? After Luffy and the others came back, Makita, who had been staying on the observation deck, also fell down lightly. However, after seeing Mr. 3 and Miss behind Luffy and the others during the Golden Week, he immediately looked at the two of them as if they were facing a big enemy. Don't worry. These two are like you now, so don't be so nervous. Luffy could naturally understand Makita's vigilance. Makita's current situation is equivalent to betraying the Baroque Work Club. After being informed by Mr. O, it is not surprising that she sent someone to solve her problem. After all, I have done something similar before. However, after hearing what Luffy said, Makita was slightly relieved, but then surprised again. Unexpectedly, even Mr. 3 was caught by Luffy, and see Mr. 3 and Miss Golden Week, even if they can move freely, they don't dare to do other small things. Makita doesn't feel like it's unacceptable to be caught. You? Miss Valentine, you were actually on their ship, did you also betray the Baroque Society? Where's Mr. 5? The sudden appearance of Makita also startled Mr. 3. He didn't pay attention to what Luffy said just now, thinking that the other party also betrayed the Baroque Work Club just like Vivi. Yeah, I joined the Straw Hat Pirates, how about you, do you want to join us too? Hey, you woman, when did you become our partner? Hearing Makita's words, Luffy didn't refute, but Nami couldn't help it. Makita ignored Nami's reaction and just glanced at Luffy secretly. Seeing that Luffy didn't mean to refute, she breathed a sigh of relief. Then continued to look at Mr. 3, waiting for his answer. Since she was destined to be hunted down by the Baroque Work Club, Makita naturally had to think about her future. However, his future, it seems that apart from staying on this boat, there is only one way of death. The things that Luffy mentioned about the big treasure before did not avoid him, which also meant that he knew the secret of the other party. Makita isn't stupid, even if the Straw Hat Luffy doesn't look like he's killing innocent people. But the reward of 90 million Bailey was there, and he dared not bet that he would kill himself. That sentence just said is also a statement. Since the other party did not refute what he said, it meant that he could indeed stay on this boat. Makita, who was slightly relieved, didn't seem to be as afraid of Luffy as before. HMPH, the boss won't let you go. Mr. 3 didn't answer Makita's words, just said something stubbornly, then stopped talking. The boss you're talking about is a man named Mr. Zero? I just got a phone call from him in a certain cabin. Sanji, who came back at some point, threw an even bigger dinosaur brought back by Brogy and Dory next to the Mary. When I heard the words of this man I had never seen before, this sentence suddenly popped up. Miss Nami, Miss Vivi, I'm back. Alas, is this a giant? It's really that tall. Then, without waiting for Mr. 3 to react, Sanji immediately shouted at Nami and Vivi beside Luffy. At the same time, Dory and Brogy sitting behind Nami and Vivi finally entered Sanji's eyes. It can be said that such a big giant has only been discovered until now, and Sanji is also quite outrageous. What did you say? How can you bastard mess with other people's phone bugs? Mr. 3, who suddenly heard the bad news, almost spat out a mouthful of old blood on the ground. If the boss knew that he had failed his mission and leaked the phone bug information, he would probably finish it. Luffy is suddenly interested, and Sanji's wave can be said to be an excellent assist. Perhaps without having to wait until Crocodile is resolved, the two will join and officially join themselves. In this case, the hockey of those on the ship may have hope of awakening in advance. Is there anything you can't do? Anyway, you are enemies, right? It's best for us to let your own people kill each other, right? Sanji completely ignored Mr. 3's anger and said lightly. By the way, Sanji, since you're back, Zoro should be back too? Hearing Luffy's question, Sanji was suddenly silent. Then Luffy was also silent for 4. Under the swaying bonfire, Luffy and his party were drinking with the two giants of Little Garden. Even the former Baroque agents who were captives, Luffy didn't starve them. Zoro was retrieved by Luffy in observation hockey before the banquet, and now he's having a drink with two giants. The two giants were drinking with Zoro and bragging with Usopp, laughing a few times from time to time, looking very unhappy. Sanji is constantly preparing dinosaur dishes, while Nami and Vivi are sitting next to Luffy. While eating the roasted dinosaur meat slowly, Nami would tear off a piece and feed it to Luffy's mouth from time to time. This seems to be Luffy's first formal banquet since he went to sea. Happy times are always quite short. The burning bonfire was finally extinguished, and curls of green smoke rose from the bonfire. The surroundings were already full of corpses lying in a row. With the help of Luffy, Nami carried the drunk Vivi back to the room on the Mary. Maybe because he was worried about the safety of the country, at the banquet, Vivi kept pouring himself wine. Maybe he wanted to use wine to numb himself. Nami, who was sitting next to him, didn't stop Vivi, but just kept drinking with Vivi. However, Nami's drinking capacity is obviously not comparable to Vivi's. After the banquet, he still carried Vivi back to the room as if nothing was wrong. As for the others, just fall asleep when you fall asleep outside, the vitality is tenacious, there is nothing to worry about. As for Luffy, because of Vivi, he couldn't sneak into Nami's room anymore, so he rested on the shore against the tree for the night. The next day, everyone woke up from their slumbers one after another. It would take a year for Little Garden's magnetic recording, so Luffy naturally wouldn't be waiting here. The permanent pointer of Alabasta given by Ecolem before is used. But before that, we need to go to the Drum Kingdom. Although no one was infected with the virus this time, the doctor on the Mary was essential. Then, let's go. On the Mary, Luffy said goodbye to the two giants standing on the shore. Master, let's go, we will sail to Elbaf in the future, and I will definitely become a sea warrior with honor like you. Usopp stood on the deck, waving his hands and shouting at the two giants with tears in his eyes. Hey, Dory, there seems to be some guy on the other side of the island? Brogy, who smiled and said goodbye to everyone from Luffy, suddenly looked back at his friend and opponent, and said. Ah, yes, since that's the case, let's help them, not only save our lives, but also give us wine to drink. Hearing Brogy's words, Dory nodded. Your Excellency Luffy, no matter what you encounter, you all go straight ahead. He shouted to Luffy without a head. Others might think it was the giant's blessing for their sailing, but Luffy knew the reason why they said so. Sure enough, just as the Mary was about to leave the inner bay, a huge thing suddenly floated out from under the outer sea. This. What is this? Even at Luffy's side, Nami couldn't help crying out after seeing the huge creature that appeared. Why do we always encounter such strange and huge things? Road. Luffy, we're going straight ahead. Even with trembling legs, Usopp remembered what the two giants said. What a joke, such a huge creature, if it goes straight forward, it will crash the ship and kill people. The speaker was Mr. 3, who obviously didn't expect the people on Luffy's ship to have such crazy ideas. Don't worry, those two giant friends will help us solve it, we just need to move straight forward. Although it feels a bit like putting his own destiny in the hands of others, Luffy is still willing to give it a try. This kind of thrilling thing, after becoming Luffy, won't happen often. Seeing the huge creature in front of him with its mouth wide open, except for Luffy who remained motionless with a smile, the others began to scream. Suddenly, an inexplicable aura came from the shore, and Luffy turned around if he felt a group of people. Two huge figures stood on the shore, Dory and Brogy already raising their weapons. The two of them squatted down, the sword and the axe kept accumulating power, the astonishing airwave waving around the two of them as the center, some kind of strong aura spread on the sword and the axe. Finally, the huge goldfish creature swallowed the Mary whole in its mouth. However, at this moment, the two giants on the shore also seemed to have finished charging, and the great sword and the big axe in their hands slashed down at the same time. Hakoku, with Dory and Brogy shouting. Two shock waves were formed by the slashing of the great sword and the big axe, and they shot straight towards the huge goldfish in the form of a straight column. There were no violent collisions, and the two shock waves fused together during the flight. When the giant goldfish closed its mouth, the fusion shock wave directly hit the giant goldfish's body. As if there was no obstruction, the shock wave directly blew away most of the huge goldfish's body. The bombarded part disappeared as if it had evaporated. At this moment, the Mary, which had been swallowed, was revealed again. Okay. So powerful, as expected of the masters. From the light environment to the dark environment, and then from the dark environment back to the light environment, everything is completed in an instant. Actually smashed such a huge creature directly into half of its body. Zoro and Usopp also opened their mouths wide, and then they felt their blood boil again. Can this kind of power be done on your own, Hakoku? So it is? From Luffy, who opened observation hockey just now, he naturally saw what he wanted to see. Elbaf's gun, the strongest gun of the giants, Luffy may soon be able to master. With the principle described by Dory and Brogy, and now seeing the form after the two actually use it, Luffy is confident that this trick will be mastered in a short time. How could there be such a powerful move? Sure enough, my previous caution was right. Looking at this scene with his mouth open, Mr. 3 was a little fortunate that he moved his hand when the two giants were exhausted. Otherwise, if they resorted to this trick, they would not even have scum left. To be recognized by such a mighty giant, Straw Hat Luffy, how holy are you? Glancing at Luffy, whose expression had not changed from beginning to end, Mr. 3 sighed inwardly. Can you and Miss Golden Week really get on this ship with an unknown sailing? Hey, Luffy, where are we going next? After leaving Little Garden, it is natural to consider the next itinerary. Luffy said before that he would go to 2 places before going to Alabasta. Now that the trip to Little Garden was over, and the recording needle did not record Little Garden's magnetic force, Nami naturally had to ask the direction of the sailing. I don't know the exact direction. Luffy touched his chin. After all, the original book arrived at the Drum Kingdom with a crooked hit. But you should have heard of that country, the Medical Power Drum Kingdom. Luffy looked at Mr. Point 3 and the others. After all, they had been hanging out in the first half of the Grand Line. There was no reason not to know about such a well-known country, right? In the case of the Drum Kingdom, I have a permanent pointer here. It was Makita who spoke, and now she had taken off her strange hat, but apart from the hat, the rest was still the same outfit. Short blonde hair, 2 lemon-shaped earrings, and a pale yellow dress with a lemon pattern printed on it. Luffy was pleasantly surprised that she had a permanent pointer to the Drum Kingdom. It stands to reason that, as a senior agent of the Baroque Work Club, she should focus on Alabasta. How can there be a permanent pointer to the Drum Kingdom? After all, it is a big medical country. As a killer, I saved one when I thought it would always be useful. Seeming to see Luffy's doubts, Makita quickly explained it. Although Luffy didn't refute the statement that he became a member of the Straw Hat Pirates before, but it is estimated that he will only know after getting Alabasta. Luffy said before that Alabasta is useful to his place, and when he wants to come to that time, whether to stay on this ship or be killed will have a conclusion. So if you can help Luffy now, it can be considered to increase your chances of survival. In that case, Nami, look at the directions, our next stop is the Drum Kingdom. Taking the permanent pointer from Makita, Luffy handed it to Nami. Nami took the permanent pointer and gave Makita a thoughtful look. In the case of the Drum Kingdom, is there a doctor you like to invite? Glancing at the permanent pointer, Nami directed Zoro and the others to adjust the direction of the Mary while looking at Luffy. Nami was already able to guess something about Luffy's sudden move. Although I don't know why Luffy knows so much, I just need to guide him. Yeah, that would be a doctor you didn't expect. Thinking of Chopper, Luffy couldn't help smiling slightly and replied to Nami. The devil fruit in this pirate world is truly amazing. Following the direction indicated by the permanent pointer, the Mary quickly entered a snow-covered area. He decided to change into the padded jacket, but except for Luffy, the padded jackets of several people were all the ones they wore before. After all, they were all bought by Nami for Luffy. Even though Nami bought a lot for Luffy, it wasn't enough for a few people. As for the people in the Baroque Work Club, Luffy didn't let them freeze. After all, it's probably his own crew. Hey, Mr. Luffy, there's a man standing on the sea ahead. Makita is currently working as a lookout on the ship. After all, lion fruit is easy to get up and down the observation deck, and if necessary, it can fly to the sky. It is indeed an excellent person to be a lookout. At this moment, she was holding a telescope in one hand and pointing to the sea in front of the Mary with the other, reminding Luffy. Hearing Makita's shout, the others on the Mary also walked to the bow, looking in the direction Makita pointed. The Mary gradually approached, and sure enough, on the sea directly ahead, a man in strange clothes was standing there. Wow. How did he manage to stand on the sea? Everyone was amazed at the ability to stand directly on the sea like this. This man is so ugly. It was Nami who said this, and after seeing the other party's wavy lips, clown-like face, and strange clothes, Nami complained mercilessly. Hey, you woman is too rude. Hey, it's so cold. The man who was standing quietly broke his defense immediately after hearing Nami's rant. However, at this moment, a large shadow suddenly appeared on the sea surface under the man's feet, and a huge thing floated up from the sea surface. Why does something so big suddenly float in front of the Mary from the sea every time? What everyone feels is not fear of the sudden appearance of huge things, but can't help but complain. This time it's not a strange creature, it's a ship, a big ship. Watching what floated out of the sea unfolded from its original spherical shape into a giant ship, Luffy was amazed. This should be a ship that was synthesized by Munch Munch fruit. Otherwise, it should not be able to do this. The first time he saw the man standing on the sea, Luffy knew the origin of the other party. Speaking of which, Munch Munch fruit should be a very good ability, right? I just don't know if I can swallow devil fruit or natural energy to use the corresponding ability. If I can, then this fruit will be very powerful. Moreover, this fruit is also quite useful for scientific research. Even the waste of Wapol can synthesize the heaven-defying material of Wapol metal by chance. If the person who eats Munch Munch fruit is a person with relevant knowledge, what kind of technology will the world develop? Originally, I was thinking about how to enter the Drum Kingdom because the people of hate pirates. Now that's it, Wapol brought it to the door himself, and he had ships to use. Moreover, with the hatred of the people here for Wapol, if Wapol can be executed, you can also see if you have the luck to get the reborn Munch Munch fruit. Thinking of this, Luffy looked at the huge ship in front of him, and had the feeling that a pillow would be brought up when he fell asleep. What a big ship, compared to it, the Mary looks so small. Although it was a pirate ship, everyone did not meet the panic of pirates, after all, they were pirates. And now that there are so many people on board, there is really no need to be afraid. Even Usopp, with so many people on board, did not tremble with fear for the 3 people who appeared on that big ship. It's Wapol, the king of the Drum Kingdom. How did he become a pirate? Looking at the man standing in the middle of the big ship, Vivi recognized him immediately. Vivi can be said to be deeply impressed by the king of the Drum Kingdom who deliberately slapped himself back then. But Vivi didn't know what happened to the current Drum Kingdom, and what made the king of a country become a pirate. She only knew that the current Wapol, since he had become a pirate, was no longer qualified to endure it. You said he was the king of the Drum Kingdom? It's not surprising that Vivi got to know the king of the Drum Kingdom, after all, the princess of Alabasta. But the king of a country actually became a pirate, which is unbelievable. However, why would a king of a country become a pirate? Is it too cruel to be kicked out by the citizens? Nami's muttering was half right. For such a situation, everyone is very curious. After all, new things are always attractive. Hey, is it too much for you guys to discuss me in front of me like this? Although this is the truth, being discussed in person still made Wapol, who was originally going to come forward by his subordinates, couldn't help but shout. The man in the strange costume that was standing on the sea had already stood beside Wapol, and he should have been standing on the pirate ship that had not yet unfolded before. Because the pirate ship is under the sea, people think it is standing on the sea. Huh. 7 people in total. Wapol jumped directly onto the Mary, and looked around for a while, but did not see the Makita on the lookout. It can't be just so many people, can it? Wapol couldn't believe that there were so many people on a pirate ship. However, it seems that people are not very smart. 1 second, they are still doubting the number of people on the Mary. The next second, they don't know where to take out a sword and stuff it into his mouth. Then, in the surprised eyes of everyone, he directly bit the sword and swallowed it. The ironclad chin was still twisting, as if chewing something delicious. Actually, ate the sword, it hurts just looking at it. Usopp clutched his neck, spitting out blood on his tongue, with a distressed expression on his face. We want to go to the Drum Kingdom, do you have permanent pointers or record pointers? Ignoring the shock of Usopp and the others, Wapol spoke in a commanding tone. Oh? It just so happens that we are also going to the Drum Kingdom, why don't we take you there? Luffy crossed his chest and looked at Wapol, who was chewing on the hilt of his sword. Mr. Luffy. Vivi wanted to say something, but was stopped by Nami by the side. Nami shook his head at Vivi, motioning for Vivi not to speak. From what Nami knew about Luffy, Luffy must have had his own ideas for doing this. And when Vivi said Wapol was the king of the Drum Kingdom, Luffy didn't show any surprise or confusion. As if he had known about it for a long time, it made Nami think Luffy might even know why Wapol became a pirate. In this case, Luffy still said such words, it is obviously the next step. Glancing at Vivi's speechless expression, Luffy did not speak, but looked at Wapol who jumped onto the Mary. Now that you've come up, it's not that easy to go down. Thinking about the people who came up before, the 3 members of the Golden Dragon group were thrown into the sea by Luffy. These people from the Baroque works were basically forced by Luffy to stay on the ship. And people like Wapol can only go to the Drum Kingdom if they are tied by Luffy. Oh. Are you a sensible fellow? But I don't want to take your little boat, such a big boat, with so many people. Where do you want my king to sleep? I just thought that Luffy wanted to bring his Wapol because he was afraid of himself, and replied with disgust on his face. What do you bastards say? The Mary is a great ship. Some people say that the Mary is not good, and Usopp is naturally the first to jump out. But I'm hungry now, and your ship can fill my stomach. Directly ignoring Usopp's rebuttal, Wapol turned his gaze to the railing of the Mary, and the ridiculous slap in the face suddenly came up, opening his metal-wrapped mouth and wanting to bite. Boom, Luffy punched it directly, and the big mouth wrapped in iron was directly smashed by Luffy's punch. The fat body also flew into the air under Luffy's punch. Lord Wapol. The two people who were originally standing on their huge pirate ship immediately exclaimed when they saw Wapol being knocked into the air by Luffy. "How dare you do it, little ones, give it to me." One of them ordered to the men on the pirate ship. The other jumped into the air, trying to catch Wapol, who was about to fall into the sea. Ah ah ah. Wapol, who was knocked into the air, screamed in the air, but fortunately, he was caught by the person who jumped over and did not fall into the sea. "Damn it, dare to hit me, I want to kill him." Wapol, who was caught, stood firm and shouted at the men who caught him with a trembling voice. "Makita, come towards their pirate ship, don't hold back." Luffy called out to Makita on the lookout. Makita was stunned when she heard Luffy's voice, but quickly reacted. Since Luffy let himself take action, it means that he is basically certain to stay on this ship. Thinking of this, Makita was somewhat grateful to the pirates. However, although I was grateful in my heart, I had no intention of holding back. It is snowing here now, and the wind is not too small, so I can use the wind to fly a little higher. Thinking like this, Makita held up her umbrella, activated her fruit ability, and her petite body jumped out of the observation deck, and then flew into the air under the influence of the umbrella and the wind. Feeling that the distance is almost the same, I looked at the direction, and the direction of the wind blowing itself is just right. Maximize the weight that the fruit's ability can increase, put away the umbrella, and then plunge toward Wapol's pirate ship. 10,000 kilograms. A press the top. With a coquettish shout, the petite figure fell towards Wapol's White Iron King at an exaggerated speed. The unknown Wapol and the others just watched the figure descending extremely fast, not knowing what she wanted to do. Boom, the petite figure quickly landed on the huge pirate ship, and then there was a loud noise. The huge hull broke apart from the middle, and the energy generated by the falling of 10,000 kilograms from a high altitude formed a shockwave that suddenly spread from the collision. Then the entire pirate ship exploded under this shockwave, and then slowly sank. I don't know how Makita can withstand such energy. Is it the reason of devil fruit? White snow mixed with smoke, Makita's figure holding an umbrella flew into the sky under the action of the airflow generated by the huge collision, and then slowly fell to the observation tower grave of the Mary. Thisai, Sanji watched the spectacular scene in front of him, and the cigarette he was holding in his mouth fell to the ground. Fortunately, the other party didn't seem to have used this level of ability from the beginning. Otherwise, even if he was not directly hit, such a shockwave would be enough for him to drink a pot. When Makita attacked the pirate ship, Luffy stretched his arms and directly captured Wapol on the Mary. As for his subordinates, who cares about them? Luffy was also a little silent as he looked at the pirate ship, the Iron King, which was gradually sinking in front of him. Maybe I underestimate these original works, they don't seem to be very strong, and there is still devil fruit in the upper ranks. However, Luffy remembers that as the upper fruit of the light lion fruit, it seems that the shock cannot be avoided. But Makita in front of her is completely unaffected by the reaction force, so who is the upper fruit? My Iron King. Jace, Malaman. Wapol had no idea what was going on, but for a short while, his ship was gone, and his men were gone. Usopp, work. Glancing at the crew members who were also stunned by Makita, Luffy could only remind him. Usopp was woken by Luffy, his legs shaking again. She had tied Makita with a rope before. Would she hold revenge? Would she be attacked by Makita like this? Usopp thought in horror, but his movements were not slow, and he still tied Wapol skillfully. Hey, what are you doing? I'm the king of the Drum Kingdom. Seeing that he was tied up, Wapol immediately forgot his ship and his subordinates, and shouted to himself. However, Wapol has been caught by himself, and is likely to be killed by the people of the Drum Kingdom. Will Wapol metal still appear? But according to the inertia of the plot that Luffy felt before, it should still be there, right? But it may not be called Wapol metal by then. Hey, Miss Valentine. Why haven't I seen you so powerful before? You wouldn't really join the Straw Hat Pirates, would you? Mr. 3, who had recovered from the shock, looked at Makita with a slightly frightened look. I never thought that the woman who always had a malicious smile before, but in her opinion was not very powerful, could actually have such a powerful ability. Hey. Didn't I tell you before that I joined the Straw Hat Pirates? Oh, by the way, don't call me Miss Valentine again, I'm now Makita of the Straw Hat Pirates. Makita once again said that she was part of the Straw Hat Pirates, but this time Nami didn't say anything. It's always a good thing to have a strong partner. In fact, Makita's abilities can only be so effective at sea. The ship was that big and inconvenient to move, so it was the best place for Makita's ability that needed time to prepare. If it was on land, even if there would be an impact from a falling collision, Makita was that big. The resulting shockwave won't spread very far anyway, unless she can start landing from outer space. However, she needs to use an umbrella to fly. Luffy asked before, and her weight can only be reduced to a minimum of 1 kilogram. Therefore, she basically has to climb to a high place before starting to use her abilities before each attack. It might be better if lion fruit cooperates. Although lion fruit can't act on others, umbrellas are still fine. Maybe this is also the reason why the light lion fruit is the lower rank of the ton-pressed fruit. Waipal's words have to be watched, otherwise the ropes won't hold him if he uses his abilities. Luffy explained that although he couldn't escape on the sea, if he ate the Mary, it would be troublesome. By the way, Miss Golden Week, use your ability to make him lose his energy. Luffy, who was afraid of Waipal's destruction just now, suddenly remembered that there was someone on this ship who could stop Wapol. Huh. How did you know my abilities? The little girl whose name was called by Luffy took a half step back like a frightened rabbit, and then asked Luffy back as if she remembered something. Didn't I say, your ability is very useful, that's why I say that even if you don't promise I will force you to stay on the Mary. Luffy's words made everyone else curious. What kind of ability required Luffy to do this kind of thing? Luffy turned Waipal's body so that his back was facing Miss Golden Week. Under the curious eyes of everyone, Miss Golden Week took out a palette and paintbrush with some fear, and quickly drew a strange green pattern on Waipal's back. Then, Wapol, who was still struggling and screaming, lay on the deck of the Mary as if his strength was drained. It's so relaxing to lie down like this. Wapol turned away from the yelling just now, and the whole person became lazy. Is this also the devil fruit ability? Seeing the changes in Wapol, everyone was a little surprised and asked. And Mr. Point 3 looked at Luffy with a bit of gritted teeth. How dare you order Miss Golden Week, damn it guy. But no one cared about him. Miss Golden Week, surrounded by people, was a little scared and a little embarrassed, and didn't know how to answer for a while. It's not the devil fruit ability, but a strong hinting ability. I don't know the specifics. If you want to know, just ask her yourself. By the way, what's your name? It's always Miss Golden Week, Trouble. Luffy can't always call someone else's codename for someone destined to be on his own ship, not to mention that this codename belongs to another group. Marianu. Miss Golden Week replied in a low voice. Luffy nodded, then turned and returned to the sheep's head on the Mary. Hey, why didn't you ask my name? I thought Luffy would also ask his name, but he didn't expect Luffy to turn around and leave after asking Miss Golden Week. So, Mr. 3 finally couldn't help shouting. You, 3 sounds good, just call 3 in the future. Luffy answered Mr. Point 3 without looking back. Bastard, Lousy's name is Galtino, remember it for me. Regarding Luffy's apparently perfunctory attitude, Mr. 3, that is, Galtino growled and said his name. By the way, 3, is your ability to turn your body into a candle? Still calling out the codename, Luffy wanted to find out what exactly was going on with wax fruit. Of course it can, but if it encounters high temperature, it will easily melt. Bastard, don't call me 3. Is it possible? If Marianu can help him awaken his senses, maybe he will have a low-profile version of Katakuri on his ship. Luffy hadn't considered that the other party would decline his invitation at all. But after defeating Crocodile, Luffy believes that as long as he is not stupid, he will not reject himself again. There is an island in front of you, that should be the Drum Kingdom. Luffy looked at the drum-like cliffs that appeared in his sight, and said to everyone on the boat. Oh, is it coming so soon? Originally, everyone who was doing their own thing came to the bow. The cliffs on this island are all the same shape. And there are so many. This is the first time anyone has seen a cliff of this shape, and there are still quite a few. Before long, the Mary entered an inner bay. It's a waterfall of snowmelt water, just stop there. Nami looked at the surrounding seawater and pointed to a place where a waterfall was left from a high place. The flowing water is not easy to freeze. In this cold climate, if you stop the boat at will, if you are not optimistic about the location, it will be very troublesome for the boat to leave after the water surface freezes. So shall we go straight to the doctor? Zoro said without thinking. In his opinion, since Luffy knows the situation here, he naturally knows the location of the doctor. Luffy gave him a strange look. Although he knew the plot, how could Luffy know the location? Let's ask someone first. I only know there is such a person here. Doctor, but I don't know where he is. Luffy paused when he said that. After all, Chopper is a civet cat. Oh no, reindeer. The others didn't notice Luffy's typo either, just nodding to do so. Just as Zoro was about to drop the anchor, a crowd of people suddenly poured out from the shore around the Mary. You pirates, don't move. Those people were holding various shotguns and looked unfriendly. But yes, even if the country is not destroyed by Blackbeard, there is no serious place to welcome pirates. What's going on? What's going on? Are the people here guarding this port all the time? Seeing that he was surrounded by a group of people with guns, Usopp still pinpointed his location. Get out of here quickly. In the crowd, a sturdy man with a square face walked to the front and said to the crowd on the Mary. It seems to be the leader of these people, but the tone is still calm, and he did not aim at the Mary like the others. We're just looking for a doctor in this country to partner with, nothing to do with your country. Luffy looked at the burly man in the lead calmly, and explained his reason. Humph. Not to mention that we no longer have a doctor here, even if there is, we will not let pirates log into our country. Pull your anchors out of here or we'll shoot your boats. Before the leading man could speak, there were already a lot of noises around him. Sanji, pull Wapol over here. Luffy ignored the shouts of the civilians and just turned to Sanji. Zoro is still dragging the anchor there, so I can only ask Sanji. Wapol? He's talking about King Wapol? Luffy's voice wasn't loud, but someone around could still hear it. The crowd quickly began to talk, and even the burly man who led the way looked at Luffy in surprise. Wapol had been lying lazily on the deck by the steps, and Sanji didn't take long to bring him over. Looking at Wapol being lifted by Sanji, the commotion in the crowd suddenly stopped. But soon someone couldn't help but speak. A really Wapol? This goddamn violent coon was caught, deserved. In exchange, how about I hand Wapol to you? Looking at the surrounding commoners who had no reverence for the king of their kingdom, Luffy felt that even if it was a violent coon, what Wapol did was a failure. He really is an unpopular and cruel king. The voices of the surrounding civilians clearly reached the ears of everyone on the Mary. Regarding Wapol, Vivi can be said to be the one who knows the most outside of the people of the Drum Kingdom. But it's not a good thing. The slap at the time left a lifelong impression in the heart of Vivi, who was still young at that time. Dalton, what should I do? Although Wapol has been frightened by the pirates who have invaded before and escaped the Drum Kingdom, he is no longer the king of the Drum Kingdom. But the people of the Drum Kingdom had no plans to forgive him. At this moment, the civilians surrounding the Mary all turned their attention to the sturdy man in the lead. Although we hate Wapol to the core, I'm afraid we can't promise you. Although the people hate Wapol to the core, Dalton, who is loyal by nature, does not want to deceive Luffy and them. Why, are you going to just let this cruel king go? Nami looked at Dalton with some puzzlement. Are all the people here so broad-minded? It's not like this, it's just that there is no doctor in this country anymore. No, to be precise, the only person who can be called a doctor in this country is the woman called a witch. Although they hate pirates and Wapol, they also don't want to deceive Luffy and them. In Dalton's view, although Luffy and the others were pirates, they did not directly attack these civilians because of their ability to capture Wapol alive. It is enough to see that they are not those pirates who do all kinds of evil. Moreover, the man with the straw hat at the head had seen it on the reward list 2 days ago. A man with a reward of 90 million won't be the opponent's opponent if he and others go together. What I'm looking for is the doctor you call a witch. No, it should be the witch's, pet. Luffy didn't know how to describe Chopper, and it might be okay to say the words of his disciples, but Luffy always felt that it might be easier for Dalton to understand who he was talking about. Wait, Luffy, you said the doctor we're looking for is our pet? Suddenly hearing Luffy say this, everyone turned their attention to Luffy. Some didn't understand what Luffy meant. When Luffy said that the doctor he was looking for would surprise everyone didn't take it to heart. But now Luffy suddenly said that the doctor he was looking for was someone else's pet, which had to make everyone wonder if Luffy was joking. You're talking about the reindeer that has been following Dr. Dolly? Obviously, after Luffy said this, Dalton really understood who Luffy was talking about. After all, the existence of Chopper may not be known to the nationals. But as the former captain of the Drum Kingdom, and now the interim leader of a country without a king, Dalton still knows a few things about Chopper. So, since Wapol was expelled, the country hasn't had a new king, and even the name has been thrown away? In the Bighorn village of the Drum Kingdom, Dalton brought Luffy and his party into the village from the port. After Luffy explained his intention and handed Wapol to the people, the villagers let Luffy and others go under Dalton's instructions. Now, Dalton is introducing the current situation of the Drum Kingdom to several people who got off the Mary. Luffy, Nami, Sanji, Usopp, and Vivi were the 5 who got off the Mary. Zoro is more obsessed with becoming stronger now, so he works hard whenever he has time, and now he is probably doing winter swimming training. As for the Baroque workers, they also stayed on the Mary. With Zoro on the side, you don't have to worry about what bad things they will do. Moreover, now Makita has regarded herself as a member of the Straw Hat Pirates. And Miss Golden Week, that is, Marianu, did not mean to resist much. The only ones to watch out for are Mr. Point 3 and Gal Tino, but with Zoro around, there is basically no need to worry about any problems. Zoro, who has reached the realm of cutting iron, can basically ignore Gal Tino's candle. Haven't you thought about revitalizing this country by you as king? I see that the villagers here seem to love you very much. Along the way, the villagers who pass by basically know Dalton, and whenever they see Dalton, they will greet him kindly. It's fine for me to be the captain of the guard, but I really have no confidence in running a country as a king. For what Vivi said, Dalton waved his hands again and again. Although the people trusted him, he didn't seem to be very confident. Just as everyone followed Dalton all the way, a large upright creature came towards him. Dalton, who was originally leading the way, bowed to the giant creature quite seriously when it passed by. This is a walking bear, there is no danger, but don't forget the etiquette of climbing when you meet it. Dalton bowed to the giant bear and explained to Luffy and the others. Luffy didn't have any problem with bowing to the bear. After all, it's strictly a custom, and it's not a big deal. After seeing Luffy bowing to the hiking bear, Nami and the others also bowed to the hiking bear. Dalton was also quite surprised by the polite behavior of Luffy and others. After all, they are also pirates, but the previous group attacked the Drum Kingdom directly without saying a word. By the way, have I seen you somewhere? Dalton, who had been observing Luffy and the others, always felt that he had seen this girl somewhere when he saw Vivi. That. Maybe you're wrong. Vivi obviously didn't want to reveal his identity in front of outsiders, so he waved his hand in denial. Nami and the others glanced at Vivi strangely, obviously not understanding the meaning of hiding their identities at this time. Luffy didn't say anything about it. Since Vivi didn't want to say it, there was no need for him to reveal other people's secrets. Huh. Did another hiking bear pass by? While everyone was walking and chatting, a sturdy woman passed by Luffy and the others. However, her physique was so similar to Hiking Bear that Usopp mistook her for Hiking Bear, and bowed to the other side in shock. Boom, Nami slapped Usopp directly in the head, then yelled at Usopp. You should see clearly. The sturdy women passing by did not express dissatisfaction with Usopp's behavior, and they may have been regarded as hiking bears. Mr. Dalton, did you hear that there are pirates coming? No problem? The woman asked Dalton, who was leading the way, and at the same time, she glanced at Luffy and the others. After all, Luffy's people are completely unfamiliar. Women have always lived in this place, and it is natural to know who the people in this village are. Yes, there is no problem, please rest assured. Dalton glanced at Luffy and the others, and quickly answered the woman's question. Really? That's good. The woman was visibly relieved and looked at Dalton more respectfully. Dalton didn't seem excited about the respect shown by the villagers. But that's why people in the village put so much trust in Dalton. After all, a leader who is wholeheartedly good to everyone, the villagers are very happy to let him govern this abandoned country. Mr. Dalton is very respectable. What I saw and heard along the way made Vivi admire Dalton quite a bit. After all, as a princess of a country, Vivi naturally hopes to be loved by the people. Dalton in front of him, for Vivi, is obviously an object worthy of emulation. However, Vivi looked up at Luffy, who was walking ahead. Perhaps this is what a leader should look like, with a personality that one can't help but convince, and a powerful strength. Vivi couldn't help but focus his eyes behind Luffy, his eyes were a little blurry. Nami, who was walking aside, keenly noticed Vivi's expression, and glanced at Luffy, who was walking in front with some resentment, but in the end he didn't take any action. It's just that the villagers are willing to believe it. For Vivi's praise, Dalton was a little embarrassed. After all, he was only a captain before, but now he is suddenly trusted by the people of the whole country. This situation really made Dalton feel a little overwhelmed. My residence is in front of you. Please rest for a while at my residence. I will inform you of the residence of Dr. Dorrier and the reindeer. Wapol has been imprisoned somewhere by the villagers, awaiting the verdict tomorrow. With Marianu's leisurely green effect, there is no need to worry that Wapol will take the opportunity to escape. The group soon arrived at Dalton's residence, but Usopp clearly had a deep interest in Snow Country. When Luffy and others sat down to rest, he was still in high spirits building a snowman outside. Even if he was alone, he was still enthusiastic. This bastard really doesn't discriminate. Regarding Usopp's behavior, Sanji only said that it was really naive, and that such a big person still likes to build a snowman. Those cliffs are called Sigaloji Mountain, and the castle where Dr. Dolly lives is on the highest mountain in the middle. Dalton motioned Luffy and the others to look out the window, then pointed to the tallest one and said to Luffy. This castle is really majestic. Under the guidance of Dalton, Luffy and his party finally came to the highest mountain on the island. Because of preparations, no one has contracted the Casquia germ at Little Garden. Therefore, Luffy and the others, who didn't need to be in a hurry, took the other safe way up the mountain that Dalton pointed out. And there is no need to climb the basically vertical magnetic Drumluoji mountain. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for even the current Luffy to climb such a cliff with Nami, Vivi and Usopp. Hey, Vivi, is Alabasta's palace so luxurious? Looking at the magnificent castle in front of him, Nami couldn't help showing a hint of envy. After all, girls, there are always some fantasies about castles. How to say, Alabasta's palace is probably, a little bigger than this. Vivi, who was asked, was a little entangled and didn't know what to say. After all, answering this kind of question always made people feel like showing off. Sure enough, when Vivi said this, Nami didn't ask any more questions. Oh, it's amazing, is it bigger than this castle? The door to the castle is closed, how are we going to get in? Sanji, who stepped forward to investigate, found that the castle door was closed, and asked Luffy. Hearing Sanji's words, the others also looked at Luffy. The castle is so big that you probably won't be able to hear knocking on the door, so let's just break in. Although this is not very good, there is no particularly good way at present, and with Luffy, a rubber fruit capable, there is no need to force through the front door. The sky above the castle is not completely closed, there is always a place to enter. Are you sure that if you forcefully break into someone's house, they will still agree to get on your boat? Although it is not the way to wait, but it's not justified to break into other people's homes like this, right? Without refuting Nami's words, Luffy just approached the door and opened observation haki. Soon, the layout of the castle appeared in Luffy's perception. But after opening the observation haki, Luffy also gave up the plan to force his way in. Someone came out. Seeing two figures, one person and one deer, walking towards the gate from the castle, Luffy turned and said to Nami and the others. Squeak. The heavy wooden door made a strange noise when it was opened, apparently it had not been repaired and maintained for a long time. As the castle gate opened, an old woman dressed in fashion, followed by a reindeer in a wheelchair, appeared in front of Luffy and the others. The people inside and outside the castle looked at each other, and the scene fell silent for a while. Wow wow wow. The witch has appeared. The atmosphere of silence was quickly broken. After Usopp saw the appearance of the person who came out, he screamed in horror and kept running left and right. Boom, Usopp finished his words, and he was greeted by a powerful kick. Seeing that Usopp was kicked upside down and tumbled a few times on the snow, Luffy was not angry, but felt a little bit wanting to laugh. This old woman is quite powerful, Sanji, who saw Usopp being kicked away, said while smoking a cigarette. Boom, another kick out. Sanji got the same treatment as Usopp. Keep my mouth clean, I'm still a beautiful woman in her 130s. After kicking the two of them, the beautiful woman in her 130s spoke loudly to the two of them. Mr. Sanji, Mr. Usopp, are you alright? Seeing Usopp and Sanji flying out like a gourd, Vivi asked worriedly. We're alright, Miss Vivi, please don't worry. Hearing Vivi's shout, Sanji immediately got up from the ground and waved to Vivi. Who are you? Is someone here to see a doctor? For the few Luffy people who appeared at the door, Dr. Dolly didn't feel scared or worried. After living for so long, I still have some eyes on people. My name is Monkey D. Luffy, I'm currently a pirate, and these are my buddies. Luffy introduced himself to the woman in front of him. Are you pirates? When Luffy said he was a pirate, the reindeer, who had not moved behind the woman, suddenly spoke. Ah. Alas, the reindeer has spoken. The reindeer that suddenly spoke clearly startled Nami and the others, especially Usopp, and ran around again. However, another pirate came to this country. So what is your purpose? We still lack a ship doctor on board. I heard that the Drum Kingdom is a big medical country, so I want to come here to see if we can find a suitable doctor to sail with us. Although he said so, Luffy's eyes were always on the reindeer who had just spoken. The reindeer, who was staring straight at Luffy, couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Looks like you've come prepared, brat. Luffy didn't hide his gaze, and Dr. Dollier could naturally sense Luffy's thoughts. I originally wanted to go down the mountain to see the doctor today, but since there is a distinguished guest, please come in. My name is Dr. Gureva, you can call me Dr. Doriel. Taking a deep look at Luffy, Dr. Doriel turned to look at the reindeer. Chopper, I won't go out today. There are guests at home, so don't be slow. Saying that, Dr. Dollier took the lead and walked towards the castle. The reindeer named Chopper responded, then looked at Luffy and the others. Several, come in with me. Nami and Vivi looked at each other and looked at Luffy at the same time. Sanji and Usopp had also returned to Luffy's side. Luffy nodded towards a few people, then took the lead to follow the reindeer leading the way and walked towards the castle. Nami and the others followed quickly. Although it was very strange why things were developing so strangely, they did not ask, they believed that Luffy could handle it well. Usopp and Sanji, who came in last, closed the wooden door of the castle, and the howling north wind was isolated from the castle. Following the deer-shaped chopper all the way in, Nami and Usopp curiously observed the decorations in the castle. After all, it is rare to have such an opportunity. For the two of them who have never seen the castle, all this is full of novelty. Even Luffy kept looking at it. After all, this was the first time Luffy saw the castle. Although his purpose was to invite Chopper to board the ship, since he had such an opportunity to experience the castle of this world, Luffy would not miss it in vain. Only Sanji, who doesn't seem to be very interested in any of this. On the contrary, Vivi, even though she has always lived in the palace as the Princess of Alabasta, is still curious about the palaces of other countries. Your purpose was Chopper from the beginning, right? In the room, Dr. Dorier stared at Luffy's eyes tightly. Although I don't know where Luffy learned about Chopper, Dr. Dalier has this feeling, and the other party came for Chopper from the very beginning. There are only Dr. Dory and Luffy here, and the others are in other rooms. Yes, I came to the Drum Kingdom, indeed, for Chopper. Luffy had no plans to hide the question from Dr. Dolier. I came here to take away Chopper, who was like a parent to her, and any concealment would be disrespectful to this person who is like Chopper's mother. Without those things happening in the original book, Luffy didn't know if Chopper would agree to his invitation. But Luffy has no regrets about resolving Wapple in advance and handing Wapple to the people of the Drum Kingdom. It's just a pity for the doctors on the Wapple ship. At the time, I didn't think too much about it, and it was indeed a miscalculation to directly let Makita take action to sink the White Iron King. However, after the pirate ship was destroyed at that time, he did not continue to do it, and he still had a certain chance of surviving. That's quite frank, kid. For Luffy's frankness, Dr. Dolier just gave Luffy another look. I'm not against you taking Chopper, and he really should see the outside world. Speaking of which, Dr. Dolier paused. However, I will not allow anyone to take Chopper away without his will. At the end of the day, Dr. Dolier's eyes were already filled with cold light. I may use coercive means for the enemy, but Chopper is not my enemy, and if he really doesn't want to go with me, I won't force it. This is also Luffy's real thought, although it would be a pity, but Luffy can't treat Chopper as well as those in the Baroque Work Society, it's a matter of principle. I hope you can do what you say. Wow. Dr. Dolier, help. Just when Luffy and Dr. Dorier fell silent, there was a sudden noise from outside the door. Then, the door of the room where the two of them were was violently pushed open. The little reindeer, who had returned to its original state, ran into this room with a panic-stricken face. And behind Chopper, Sanji and Usopp are chasing him, shouting, "Reindeer meat, don't run like that. What do you want to do to my reindeer? Bastards." Dr. Dory, who was silent because of the topic just now, grabbed the kitchen knife and broom hanging on the wall and chased after Usopp and Sanji. The two, who were still chasing Chopper, fled at a faster speed after seeing Dr. Dolier chasing after him. In this way, you chase me, I chase him play unfolds in Luffy's speechless eyes. Soon, the very small Chopper slipped into Luffy's room while Sanji and the two were chased by Dr. Dory, and had no time to care. I saw Chopper quickly close the door after entering, and then pressed his hooves against the door, with a sigh of relief with fear on his face. Seemingly sure that the two outside were not chasing in, Chopper lowered his hoofs against the door and wiped his sweat-soaked forehead. Tony, Chopper. The little reindeer, who had never imagined that there were people in this room, was frightened by the sudden sound, and then turned back stiffly. After seeing Luffy sitting there looking at him, he quickly ducked towards a chair beside the door. It's just that the hiding direction seems to be a bit wrong, and the head wearing a pink hat is half hidden behind the chair. The upper two hooves grabbed the chair legs, and the whole body and legs arched toward the other side of the chair. Looking at the classic reverse hiding, Luffy didn't know what to say for a while, so he had no choice but to remind. "You're hiding." What did the little reindeer froze after being reminded by Luffy, and then slowly began to wriggle towards the back of the chair, but his head did not need to be adjusted. The reindeer, which was hidden again, stared at Luffy like a voyeur. "Human, how did you know my full name?" Although he was afraid of life, after all, it was the person invited by Dr. Dalier, and Chopper was not too scared to speak. "Dr. Doral just told me. How is it? Do you want to be a pirate with me?" Since there was such a chance to be alone, Luffy naturally invited Chopper directly. Are you inviting me?" Luffy's words made Chopper visibly stunned. Everyone he'd seen before would only call him a monster. And this person in front of him, not only did not call him a monster, but also invited him, because he had never seen him transformed? Yes, I heard from Dr. Dolly that you have learned all her medical skills. There is a shortage of doctors on my ship, so I hope you can come and be the ship doctor on my ship. For a performance like Chopper's, Luffy seemed patient. HMPH, even if you, a human, praise me, I won't agree to you, idiot. Chopper, who was still hiding behind the chair, twitched and moved out immediately after hearing Luffy say that he had learned all the medicine from Dr. Dorier. After a while, Luffy saw Chopper's 2 signature moves, and Luffy felt that Chopper was too simple. Why don't you agree? Dr. Dolly also hopes that you can go to sea with me. While Dr. Doral did say she wanted Chopper to see the outside world, she didn't say she wanted Chopper to follow Luffy. Luffy said this deliberately, although it was a bit of a misunderstanding of Dr. Dolly's meaning, but it was not a deception. You said that Dr. Dolly also wants me to go to sea with you? Don't lie. Human fruit are all liars. Excited, Chopper's body suddenly grew larger and turned into a huge humanoid. Don't get excited, you have grown bigger. Ah, bastard. Chopper, who was reminded by Luffy again, shrank quickly and returned to his previous appearance. You aren't you afraid? I was shaking just now? Seeing Luffy's still flat face, Chopper couldn't help but ask. It's not something to be surprised about. The devil fruit's powers are all kinds of strange. You can get bigger and smaller, and I can lengthen my body like this. Saying that, Luffy suddenly stretched out his arm towards Chopper's direction. Ah. A monster. Seeing Luffy's sudden lengthening of arms, Chopper's eyes suddenly bulged out, and he shouted at Luffy with a frightened look. Call me a monster, right? When you get on the boat, you will look good. Boy, it's alright, to be able to talk to Chopper. That kid is very afraid of life. Dr. Dolly who was holding a kitchen knife and broom, opened the door from the door and came in. She glanced left and right, as if she wanted to find someone. But seeing Luffy actually chatting with Chopper, he exclaimed in surprise. Am I a monster after all? Isn't it normal for monsters to talk to monsters? Luffy deliberately emphasized some monster words, looking at Chopper while answering Dr. Dorier. Bastard. Bastard, who are you calling a monster? Although I did accidentally say that the other party was a monster just now, but I don't need to repeat it all the time, right? This human being is too vengeful. Chopper could still hear Luffy's accentuated tone, but he didn't know how to refute it. Although he was called a monster by the man in the straw hat in front of him, Chopper did not feel the same as being called a monster by others. The fact that he didn't feel angry at all made Chopper a little weird. Even Dr. Dolly who had just opened the door and came in, was a little surprised. After all, she knew a lot about Chopper. In the past, as long as he was said to be a monster, he would grow uncontrollably, but now he is not even angry at all. What did the man in front of him say to Chopper while he was away? But it's a good thing that Chopper doesn't care about these things, and now the first thing he has to do is to cook those 2 bastards who want to cook Chopper's meat. Thinking of this, Dr. Dory closed the door again. Since Luffy can make Chopper not care about the name of the monster, let him solve Chopper more. Chopper, go out to sea with me. There are many people like you in the ocean outside, and there is even a kingdom of talking animals. Luffy looked at Chopper seriously, and invited him again, with anticipation in his eyes. Looking at Luffy's expectant eyes, Chopper opened his mouth blankly, wanting to say something. Boom, just then, a roar came from outside the castle. What's the matter? What happened? Interrupted by the sudden roar, Chopper dared not look into Luffy's eyes again. He hurriedly ran out, trying to conceal his desire. Huh? It seems that I was still showing mercy at that time. Seeing that Chopper was about to agree, he was interrupted by the sudden sound of cannons. Luffy opened observation hockey rather unhappily, and everything outside was quickly imprinted in his mind. Wapol, who was supposed to be guarded by the people, appeared at the gate of the castle with the support of his 2 men. And those 2 subordinates were the 2 who were with him in front of the White Iron King. Isn't this dead, and it's a bit incredible to have arrived here even when the ship was destroyed. It seems that I will have to kill myself in the future. Perceiving Wapol and his 2 subordinates who appeared outside the castle, Luffy's expression was a little ugly. I don't know if this will happen if I kill him before. Luffy got up and walked out of the room. At this moment, Nami and Vivi, who had been resting in the other room, rushed out at the same time. Obviously he and the others heard the roar just now, but they didn't see Sanji and Usopp at this moment, not even Dr. Dolly. Luffy sensed it with observation hockey and found that they had appeared at the gate of the castle, and Chopper was running towards the gate of the castle quickly. You 2 follow me. The Wapol guy was rescued by 2 of his men, and now there are 3 of them at the door. With Marianu's abilities, Wapol could not have escaped on his own, apparently being rescued by his 2 men. When Luffy and the others entered the Drum Kingdom, They handed Wapol to them. Obviously, those people were not the opponents of Wapol. Didn't all his men sink with the pirate ship? Can they still swim here? Both Nami and Vivi were a little surprised. Even if they were swimming, they couldn't be so fast, right? It should have grabbed another ship, otherwise it wouldn't have been so fast. Luffy was talking while walking, the two women followed behind Luffy, and the three of them soon came to the castle gate. Damn it, Straw Hat Brat, you are here. Wapol, who was still facing off against Sanji before, jumped up the first time he saw Luffy. Apparently being caught by Luffy before, Wapol was extremely angry, as if he had been humiliated. Your life is really big, can you find it back here? Luffy ignored the yelling Wapol and turned his attention to his two men. HMPH, if it weren't for you, we would have returned to this country long ago, and it is unforgivable to even dare to arrest Lord Wapol and hand it over to those foolish people. The clown man with wavy lips, after hearing Luffy's words, looked at Luffy very angrily. Also, get out of my castle quickly, this is my castle, not for you fools. This was said to Dr. Dalier, who was beside Sanji and Usopp, but apparently he couldn't hear the answer he wanted. What? You ask me the secret of eternal youth. Dr. Dolier turned a deaf ear to Wapol's anger, and instead teased him with great interest. What a smart old woman, knowing that she won't sit idly by because of Chopper, so she doesn't look worried at all. At this time, Chopper looked at the three Wapols angrily. It was because of these people that Dr. Silk died. Chopper couldn't contain his anger, and the originally petite figure suddenly rose up and turned into a reindeer shape similar to King Kong. Oh? I remember you, the reindeer beside the quack doctor. What kind of devil fruit did you eat? Seeing the sudden transformation of Chopper, Wapol's men seemed to remember the existence of Chopper. You are not allowed to call Dr. Silk a quack. Chopper, who was already on the verge of anger, finally couldn't help rushing towards him after hearing the words of the clown man with wavy lips. Chopper. Dr. Dorier looked at Chopper, who rushed out worriedly. Sanji, Usopp, you and Chopper deal with those two Wapol's men, Wapol is up to me. I would like to see if I kill you here, if there will be a Black Drum Kingdom. Got it. I'll fix them. Just leave the support to me. Sanji is quite normal when it comes to fighting men. As long as he is not careful, with Chopper's cooperation and Usopp's harassment, he should be able to easily deal with these two people. I won't let you hurt Lord Wapol again. Looking at the rushing human-shaped reindeer, Jace next to Wapol, the man with wavy lips, took out a bow. 3 arrows were quickly attached to the bowstring, and then shot towards Chopper, who was rushing in midair. Bang bang bang. 3 gunpowder explosions sounded in the air, and the arrows shot by Jace were blocked by the bombardment of the 3 gunpowders. In terms of shooting, I won't lose to you. Stopping Jace's 3 arrows, Usopp scratched his nose with his thumb and said to Jace, who was shooting arrows. With someone standing in front of him, Usopp is quite confident, at least he won't be frightened by his legs. Good job, Usopp, it's my turn, attack, Sanji complimented, and then quickly charged towards another of Wapol's men. And because the arrow was blocked, Chopper rushed to Jace without being blocked. Lambo Ball, wrist strengthening, carving hoof. Chopper, who was about to approach Jace, let out a low cry, and the blue pill that had been crushed long before he rushed out was effective at this moment. The originally uniform human-shaped arm suddenly exploded with muscles, and Chopper's right arm bent backwards, and then slammed it out. The strengthened wrist burst out with incomparably powerful power at this moment, and it was directly printed on Jace's forehead when it was too late for Jace to dodge. Boom! A bright red hoofprint emerged from Jace's forehead, and Jace flew backwards under the blow. Jace. Malaman, who was on the side, wanted to catch up to check on Jace, but was kicked by Sanji, who was approaching quickly. Even the proud explosive head ability flew out before using it. The 2 who did not go through Wapol's fusion couldn't stop it when the 3 of Sanji preempted. 2 useless guys. Glancing at the men who were quickly knocked into the air, Wapol pouted and cursed, then looked at Luffy again. He was easily caught by the opponent's punch before, and Wapol wouldn't charge directly no matter how stupid he was. So he used the fruit ability to transform himself into the appearance of a house, and in 2 days his arm also changed into the appearance of a cannon hole. So getting so big is a target for me. Second gear. Luffy swung his right hand to the side, and transparent steam began to emerge from Luffy's body, causing Luffy's skin to turn red. Then the right hand continues to make a fist and pull back, and the entire right hand quickly expands in a circle. Third gear. Shishong. A solid, transparent beam of light burst out from Luffy's fist. Before Wapol could react, the transparent air beam directly turned his body into a house and blasted him out. The conditions for Shishong to hit the air beam require extremely fast speed and great strength. If the second and third gears are not turned on, Luffy's own speed and strength cannot meet the requirements of using Shishong. In order to prevent accidents, Luffy can be said to use extremely powerful moves to attack Wapol. And Wapol, who was hit by Luffy's move, wanted to shoot, but he seemed to be drained of his body's strength in an instant. The body and hands that had transformed into houses and cannons returned to human form. It's just that Wapol, who has changed back into human form at this time, has a bright hole in his chest that is gurgling with bright red blood. The chin wrapped in iron was also scratched by the blood left from the corner of his mouth. Snapped, Wapol's round body slammed into the snow. Luffy glanced indifferently and opened Observation Haki. Observation Haki exerted his full strength, and all the scenes and creatures in the Drum Kingdom appeared in Luffy's mind. Feeling that Wapol's breath of life finally disappeared, Luffy paid more attention. Soon, a special breath emerged from Wapol's body and flew in a certain direction. Luffy tried to focus his perception entirely on this breath, and the sights of other places disappeared from Luffy's perception. This breath did not fly far, but stopped in a certain village in this Drum Kingdom. Then, the breath rushed towards a basket of fruits under Luffy's perception. The breath finally stopped on one of the fruits, and then, in Luffy's perception, it was just an ordinary fruit, and suddenly a layer of spiral patterns spun. In the middle of the fruit, like piranhas, two serrated shapes similar to fangs emerged. Feeling the situation that Observation Haki sensed, Luffy opened the eyes that he had just closed because of the concentration. His eyes were full of shock. Can your own Observation Haki even sense the breath of devil fruit? But you've never sensed devil fruit's aura before, have you? Or, only the devil fruit that is about to be reborn can feel its aura when it leaves the host? In any case, the first thing to do now is to confirm whether the devil fruit is a munch fruit. If his Observation Haki really has this special ability, then Nami and the others' devil fruit may be able to get it soon. Looking at Luffy, who had closed his eyes since Wapol fell to the ground, Nami and the others were very curious, but they didn't make a sound. Although they didn't know what Luffy was doing, they knew there must be a reason why Luffy was doing it. If they interrupted what Luffy was doing for their own reasons, maybe Luffy wouldn't blame themselves, but they wouldn't forgive themselves. I have some things to deal with now, Sanji. The two lying down there in Wapol's corpse will be handed over to you and Usopp. You just hand them over to Dalton. Ignoring Chopper and Dr. Dory who were still absent, Luffy quickly explained Sanji. What's the matter, Luffy? Is there anything urgent? Nami was nervous about Luffy's sudden urgency, fearing that something bad might happen. Don't worry, if what I sense is right, it's a good thing for us, and it's going to be a great thing. Luffy comforted Nami, then turned to look at Chopper. Chopper, will you accept my invitation to be the ship's doctor on my ship? Luffy. Chopper, who was called by Luffy, came back to his senses, glanced at Luffy who didn't leave immediately even though he was eager, and then turned his eyes to Dr. Dorier. If you want to go, just follow. The Drum Kingdom won't be your end, and I can't be your shackles. Seemingly seeing the thoughts in Chopper's eyes, Dr. Dorier gently turned her head to one side. Although reluctant to give up, but the chicks grow up, after all, they want to fly high. Mr. Luffy, is he all right? On the way back to the Mary, Vivi looked at Nami beside him with some worry. Don't worry, since Luffy said it was a great thing, there's nothing to worry about. If it was Nami before, Luffy might have been very worried if he suddenly showed such an eager look, but not now. Because I believe in him. Another thing, Luffy killed Wapol. Although Wapol is unpopular in the Drum Kingdom, he is always the orthodox king of the Drum Kingdom, and it may be very troublesome in the future. In addition to Luffy's eager look just now, the other thing that worries Vivi is that Luffy killed Wapol. The Drum Kingdom is a member of the world government, and Luffy has now killed Wapol. If the world government finds out about this, it means that Luffy has declared war on the world government. Will Luffy be in trouble? Chopper, who had been following Nami and Vivi, had his head down, but raised his head after hearing Vivi's words. In the end, Chopper agreed to Luffy's invitation, although he was very reluctant to give up Dr. Dolly. But I still want to see the talking animal kingdom, that Luffy said. Well, after the news spreads here, because Luffy killed Wapol, the world government is likely to count the destruction of the Drum Kingdom on Luffy's head. At that time, Luffy's bounty will be further increased. Oh, but the Drum Kingdom was obviously destroyed by another group of pirates? Chopper, who has no experience in the world, naturally does not know the twists and turns, and naturally thinks that this kind of thing is too abnormal. But this is just my guess. After all, the destruction of the Drum Kingdom was still seen by the Blackbeard pirates. Vivi thought for a moment. Dalton had said before that the Drum Kingdom was defeated by the Blackbeards. Since there were witnesses, the world government would not have done such a thing. Alabasta is also a member of the world government, and Vivi is still willing to believe in the world government. Don't worry about it, Since Luffy chose to take action, he has already considered the consequences, and now that he has been forced to become a pirate, where is the bad guy? After hearing about Marine and the world government's attitude towards Luffy from Smoker, Nami didn't expect anything from them. Since no matter what he does, he will be rewarded, so as long as Luffy thinks it is right, Nami will support Luffy unconditionally. The two of them went down the mountain and communicated like this. With Chopper there was no need to worry about the safety of Nami and Vivi. As for Sanji and Usopp, they already carried their bodies down the mountain first. After Chopper agreed to get on the boat, Luffy explained to Nami and walked towards the position perceived by observation Haki alone. When a person passes by, Luffy's speed will be very fast, and even in order to prevent being eaten, Luffy even turns on the second gear. Soon, Luffy came to the place where the basket of fruits was. The village is not big, and it doesn't look like it's inhabited. The village was quite messy, and after being attacked by Blackbeard's gang, the rest of the people moved in together. Luffy walked over to the basket that had been thrown on the ground at random, and several of the fruit had spilled out. However, because of the perennial low temperature of the Drum Kingdom, these fruits were not damaged. Luffy crouched down and took the fruit that was obviously different from the surrounding fruit in his hand. Sure enough, Munch Munch fruit. Although I haven't seen the devil fruit illustration, the shape of Munch Munch fruit in the previous life has been announced, so Luffy can confirm that this is Munch Munch fruit. Luffy's hand holding Munch Munch fruit trembled a little, and since he crossed into this world, he has not been so excited for a long time. Your own observation Haki was different from the start. After all, it is possible to completely project what is perceived, whether biological or non-biological, into the mind. No one else's observation Haki can do it except himself. Maybe it's because of his observation Haki that he can present everything, so he can even feel the breath of devil fruit. However, although I can feel it, the strength of my own observation Haki is always limited. If devil fruit was reborn in a particularly far place, he wouldn't be able to perceive it. This time, Munch Munch fruit is still reborn in the Drum Kingdom, and I can only say that my luck is really good. But what if the next time devil fruit respawns far away? Luffy's originally excited heart calmed down slightly and began to think about this problem. Previously, in my own observation Haki's perception, when Munch Munch fruit was reborn, although the movement speed of the breath was fast, it was not so fast that Luffy couldn't catch up. If you are driving observation Haki to perceive, while following this breath, you will completely follow. But this is also limited to land. If devil fruit respawns far away, it will be no different from the previous situation. Even if I learned techniques like moonwalk, I didn't have enough physical strength to support myself to fly across the sea. Luffy touched his chin. If he can't do it on his own, what about devil fruit's ability? Among the demon fruit powers that you will encounter later, what abilities can help in this situation? By the way, lion fruit. Luffy patted his head, thinking about going to the Golden Lion to try his luck when he couldn't find Yunyan fruit, but he almost forgot. It's just still a matter of luck. I hope lion fruit won't be reborn too far, otherwise it will be an empty joy. In this way, Nami's devil fruit can be settled. As for whether he could beat the Golden Lion, Luffy was not worried, and now he just hoped that the Golden Lion would come to him soon. Otherwise, the Golden Lion at high altitude, himself would not be able to find him. Thinking of this, Luffy stood up and glanced at the Munch Munch fruit in his hand. The owner of this fruit, Luffy already had an idea. Although Usopp is a little tricky, it's not enough to use the full power of this Munch Munch fruit. Only Frankie, who has a good understanding of boats, machinery, and various materials, is the most suitable candidate for the Munch Munch fruit ability. As for whether Frankie is willing to eat or not, Luffy thinks that Frankie should not refuse the temptation to synthesize new materials. Moreover, with Munch Munch fruit, it is also a quite suitable ability for him as a half-machine half-human body. As for whether Frankie will get on his own boat, Luffy once again ignores the possibility of denial. According to the previous situation of Waipal's appearance at the castle, maybe even if Luffy didn't invite Frankie, Frankie would board the ship by himself. If Munch Munch fruit is in your own hands, it is only a matter of time before you want to synthesize Wapol metal. Even if Frankie came, it might be possible to synthesize better materials. At that time, will I be able to rely on this newly synthesized material to obtain the qualification to join the world government? You don't need to come forward yourself, you just need to find someone you can trust. If this qualification can be obtained, there may be unexpected effects in the future. But it's too early to think about this. Everything needs to wait until this Munch Munch fruit is eaten before it can start. When you go back, you don't need to open the second gear. After all, Munch Munch fruit is already in hand, so you don't need to be so anxious. By the time Luffy returned to the Mary, it was already dark. The first time Luffy boarded the Mary, Everyone turned their attention to Luffy, to be precise, the uncharacteristic fruit in Luffy's hand. This is devil fruit. Naturally, there were people on the Mary who knew devil fruit, but for the people who came out of East Blue, it was the first time they saw devil fruit. Yes, this is devil fruit. Luffy didn't care too much about everyone's curious eyes, and when someone asked, he didn't need to hide anything. After all, they are either their own crew members, or they are booking crew members, anyway, they are all their own. But about the fact that observation Haki can perceive the breath of the reborn devil fruit, it is enough for him to know. No one knows, they can be exposed one day later, and they can get more benefits. You just left in such a hurry, just for this devil fruit? Although I didn't ask Luffy before, but now that Luffy is back, and there is such a strange fruit in his hand. Naturally, Nami felt that Luffy was in a hurry to leave after discovering this fruit. But how did you find this devil fruit? Vivi asked curiously. Luffy had been with him and others before, why could he know where devil fruit was? My observation Haki is quite special, in addition to being able to perceive biological breath, as long as it is something that exists, it can perceive it. After this time, Luffy basically confirmed what his observation Haki can perceive, that is, everything that exists in this world. There is a difference between being able to perceive devil fruit and being able to perceive the breath of devil fruit when it is reborn. Luffy's current statement will only make people think that he found this devil fruit after sensing the existence of devil fruit. No one would have thought that what Luffy sensed was the breath of devil fruit's rebirth. After all, it is basically impossible for others to think of such a thing before they know that devil fruit has breath when it is reborn. Creating something out of nothing is the hardest, unless that person already knows this kind of thing. And as far as Luffy knew, in this pirate world, apart from the 5 elders and who he didn't know very well, only Blackbeard might know about this kind of thing. However, if possible, Luffy would like to try and kill Blackbeard if he can meet him before going to Sky Island. I was thinking of letting Summit War develop as usual, but the speed of my own strength growth seems to be a bit beyond my expectations. Perhaps, I can kill Blackbeard first. After all, even before the time travel, there was basically no Blackbeard plot, and killing Blackbeard would have no impact on the subsequent plot. But such a guy may not be so easy to kill. Moreover, I have to be responsible for the lives of the crew, so I can only see if there is a suitable opportunity. Observation Haki? What is that? Then what is the power of this fruit? Even the senior agents of the Baroque Work Club are basically unaware of the existence of Haki, and the devil fruit illustration is even more impossible. As for what observation Haki is, Luffy didn't answer. After Crocodile is resolved, Luffy will explain it to them together. At that time, Marianu will try to develop her abilities. After the Alabasta matter is resolved, the time will not be so urgent, and you can plan well at that time. I'll tell you about observation Haki's words later, and I want Marianu to get on board so strongly, and it's also related to Haki. Huh. But I don't know what Haki is. The girl who was suddenly called by Luffy's name still had a timid expression, but she still expressed that she didn't know what Haki was. We'll talk about this later. This devil fruit is the Munch Munch fruit from Wapol. Luckily, this devil fruit happened to be reborn around here after Wapol's death. Hearing Luffy's words, Nami and Vivi looked at each other. Luffy's expression before was obviously not just because Munch Munch fruit was reborn nearby, but the two women didn't talk too much. Since Luffy said that, let's just pretend that's what it is. You guys are lucky too. Gal Tino's tone is a bit sour, he has been working in the Baroque Work Club for so many years. There are not a few demon fruit powers that have been killed. Why have I never encountered such a good thing as devil fruit reborn nearby? The price of a devil fruit is at least 100 million yuan. If you can encounter such a good thing, you can at least save a few years. Then Luffy, who are you going to give this fruit to? Zoro, who had been silent for a while, glanced at Munch Munch fruit curiously, and quickly lost interest again. But still a symbolic question. I already have a suitable candidate for Munch Munch fruit, but that person is not on board yet. Have you even prepared devil fruit for others before you get on the boat? Gal Tino suddenly realizes that he should probably agree to Luffy's invitation to come aboard. Zoro and the others didn't say anything. After all, with Chopper in front, it wouldn't be surprising to see a few more. This fruit will be very important to us, so I need professional people to use it. This sentence is mainly explained to Usopp. After all, there is only Nami on board. Usopp urgently needs devil fruit to strengthen his strength. Nami's words Luffy already has an idea, only Usopp, no clear goal yet. It stands to reason that as the first Usopp to board the ship, he has the right to choose this fruit. After all, these people Luffy is looking for are partners, not subordinates, so they still have to take into account their feelings. I'm fine, Luffy, you decide. Usopp, who was looked at by Luffy, immediately waved his hand to indicate that he didn't care. It would be better to say that Luffy can take into account his own feelings. Usopp is still very grateful. Boom, boom, boom. The roar of artillery came from the tallest magnetic drum, Luoji Mountain. Chopper, who was climbing up the Mary, was taken aback and thought something was wrong over the castle. The others on and under the boat also looked in the direction of the roar of the artillery. Chopper suddenly transformed into a reindeer in the form of a beast. His eyes were full of worry, his hooves were connected, and he seemed to run away immediately. Don't worry, Chopper, it's just parting fireworks. Stopping the panicked Chopper, Luffy's calm voice rang in Chopper's ear. Chopper, who was still worried, calmed down under Luffy's seemingly magical words. Chopper turned his gaze to the direction of the gunfire, which was now shrouded in a layer of sakura pink dust. Look, it's the sakura flower. The pure white snow that fell one after another, stained by pink dust, was like a piece of bright sakura flowers, falling from a huge sakura flower tree in the middle. How beautiful! Nami and Vivi were lying on the edge of the Mary, staring at the swirling pink snow, and the two pairs of beautiful eyes were full of stars. What a beautiful view! Zoro, who was resting on the main mast even when it was snowing, opened his closed eyes. Sanji silently lit a cigarette and smoked it quietly in his mouth, looking at the pink snow like falling sakura. A flash of thoughts flashed in his blurred eyes. Makita on the observation deck, Marianu standing timidly behind Vivi and Nami, even the man Galtino, all stared at the pink sky in front of him. At this time, Chopper has changed back to a small appearance, and those big eyes are staring at everything in front of him. Dr. Silk. In the pink snowflakes, Chopper seemed to see the man who saved him again. The pirate flag hanging at the top of the castle is also flying in the wind under the print of the flying sakura flowers. This winter miracle sakura flower blooms to bid farewell to Yuzu, who is traveling for the first time. The fluttering pink dust, blown by the snow wind, soon dyed the snow in the entire Drum Kingdom into sakura pink. Is it really okay to watch him leave from a distance like this? Outside the castle on Sigaloji Mountain, Dalton, who had commanded the citizens to put off this prosperous fireworks, looked at the tearful Dr. Dolier and said, "That's it." Dr. Dolier whispered softly, looking at the reindeer that was about to leave in the harbor. 2 lines of clear tears slowly slid down the old face. "Silly son, take care. The snow on the horizon seems to be getting denser and denser, and they are swaying, obscuring Li Ren's sight." Then, cheers to the addition of Chopper. On the Mary, which was slowly leaving the Drum Kingdom, Luffy held a wooden cup and shouted at the crowd. Cheers. Glasses filled with champagne collided and splashed several times. There were tears in Chopper's eyes. The sadness of parting was washed away by the cheers of the crowd, and he took a sip from a wooden cup in both hands. "Here, Chopper. Do you see what Usopp looks like? Try making it too. It's going to be fun." Under the strange gazes of Nami and the others, Luffy held Chopper's shoulder and pointed at Usopp, who had inserted 2 chopsticks between his nose and lips, seductively. "Really? Really?" The simple Chopper asked subconsciously, but he did it directly according to Usopp's way. Ha ha ha. Seeing that the originally cute little reindeer suddenly made such a strange action, everyone who was drinking champagne burst into laughter. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. Chopper, who has completely integrated into the banquet, doesn't care how funny his current image is, and laughed happily. "Take this as your revenge for calling me a monster." With a smile on the corner of Luffy's mouth, he sighed inwardly as he looked at Chopper, who had completely released himself under his own flickering. Although I don't know why Luffy fooled Chopper so much, I saw that Chopper was so happy to fit into the Mary. Everyone who was still worried about Chopper's life experience also let go of their worries. The banquet has been going on happily. Even Galtino, who has not yet decided to join, hangs his shoulders with Usopp Chopper in this lively atmosphere. The petite Marianu was sipping her drink, and her slightly squinted eyes showed that she was in a pretty good mood at this time. And Nami, who was originally quite unhappy with Makita, had already had a drink with the other party at this time. Zoro was still drinking by himself over there, raising his glass to Luffy from time to time. Sanji has been busy in the kitchen. Although he can't sit down and celebrate with everyone, he is obviously very satisfied that everyone can like the food he makes. Thinking about Alabasta, Luffy walked over to Vivi, who was holding a wine glass by himself, and stood behind Vivi on the bow of the Mary, looking at the slightly thin back of the other party, and asked aloud. Vivi, who was looking at the front in a trance, was slightly taken aback when he heard Luffy's voice. Turning around, raising the wine glass in his hand and gently touching the glass in front of him, Vivi said, "No, although I do worry about Alabasta's situation, after seeing Mr. Luffy's strength, I have no doubts about saving Alabasta." Having said this, Vivi took a sip of the champagne in the glass and continued. Just thinking. It must be a very happy thing to be able to take risks with Mr. Luffy all the time, right? If you want, the Straw Hat Pirates welcome you to join at any time. Luffy gave Vivi a serious look, then said, "If I were not the Princess of Alabasta's words." Vivi shook his head and drank the wine from the glass in one gulp. Glancing in Nami's direction, he found that the other party was drinking with Makita, and he didn't notice the situation here. Vivi stepped forward, stood on tiptoe, quickly kissed Luffy's lips, and then walked towards the wine table with a blushing face in Luffy's surprised eyes. The soft touch is fleeting, but the girly fragrance that remains on the corners of the lips has not dissipated for a long time. Luffy shook his head with a wry smile, took a sip of the champagne in his glass, turned and walked towards the wine table as well. Nami, who was originally fighting with Makita, saw Vivi and Luffy coming back one after another, glanced at the two with a bit of meaning, and continued to compete with Makita. At this time, there was a lively scene on the Mary. Ah, the sun is out. The Mary had been sailing for a day in the snowy weather of the Drum Kingdom. Now, the weather has finally cleared up, which means that the Mary has left the range of the Drum Kingdom. There was still a little snow piled up on the edge of the Mary, and it shimmered with a sense of crystal under the sunlight. The snow on the deck has been shoveled. There are many people on the Mary, and there is not enough space for so many people to rest, so they can only take turns to shovel the snow. A few girls in Nami's room were barely able to live, but if there were 2 more, it would probably be too crowded. However, before the 7 waters, it is estimated that no one will join except Robin. Nami, how far is it from Alabasta? And now that we are out of the Drum Kingdom, it should not be too far to come to Alabasta. Now that the weather is clear, Luffy is naturally sitting on the sheep's head, which he usually sits on. Behind Luffy, as always, Nami was standing there. How do I know this? We are traveling according to the permanent pointer, and there is no map, how to measure the distance. For Luffy's question, Nami gave Luffy an angry look. Grand Line is different from the world, and I have never been to Alabasta, and there is no map to show the direction. How can I know the specific itinerary? Don't Vivi know too? Luffy turned to look at Vivi next to Nami. Vivi's expression was as usual, as if nothing had happened last night. Luffy didn't bother, and treated Vivi as usual. We should be able to reach Alabasta by this time tomorrow. Vivi still has a certain understanding of the sea near Alabasta. But seeing Luffy turn his head to look at him, Vivi's originally calm face flashed a trace of unnaturalness. Is that so? Miss Nami, Princess Vivi, this is dessert for you. Sanji came out of the kitchen with 2 desserts and saw Nami and Vivi standing on the bow, his eyes lit up. After passing desserts to both Nami and Vivi, Sanji went back to the kitchen and served 2 more desserts. Ever since Makita said she joined the Straw Hat Pirates, Sanji has that attitude from the very beginning. Miss Makita, come down for dessert. Sanji shouted towards the watchtower, and then handed one of them to Marianu, who was sitting on the steps. This little lady, this is your dessert. Huh? Do I have a share too? Looking at the dessert handed to him, Marianu was a little flattered, and for a moment did not dare to pick up the dessert plate that Sanji handed over. Hey, curly-browed cook, where's our dessert? Gal Tino, who didn't know much about Sanji, asked Sanji just like Mr. 9 before. Huh? Why should I make dessert for you guys? Handing the last dessert to Makita, who flew down with an umbrella, Sanji answered Gal Tino's question without hesitation. You bastard, are you discriminating against men? Gal Tino, who was choked by Sanji, immediately became furious and yelled at Sanji. Give up, he's that kind of person, a erotic cook who only has sex with women all day long. Zoro, who was resting after exercising, opened one eye and glanced at Gal Tino and Sanji again, and said in a flat tone. Huh? You lunatic green algae head has no right to speak to others. Hearing Zoro's taunt, Sanji immediately turned his eyes to Zoro. Then, the daily fight between the two began. What a peaceful day. Usopp took a sip of tea and sighed leisurely while holding the fishing rod. Chopper, who was originally fishing with Usopp, was so frightened that he threw the fishing rod in his hand after seeing Zoro and Sanji fighting each other. Then the little body began to run left and right on the deck. What should I do? What should I do? The two of them got into a fight. What if they were injured? Chopper, who saw this situation for the first time, was in a state of bewilderment. Don't worry, the two of them won't feel well if they don't fight for a day, and, even if they're injured, isn't there a doctor like you? Usopp glanced at the panicked Chopper, thinking that he finally had someone as timid as himself. Oh, yes, I'm a doctor. Chopper, who was reminded by Usopp, immediately stopped, and after a pause, he sat back next to Usopp again. He then lifted the glass that had been set aside and took a leisurely sip with Usopp. How wonderful, such a life. Luffy ignored the farce on the boat and still kept his eyes on the sea in front of him. Every now and then, go back to take a bite of the dessert Nami handed you, Luffy, who turned back again, took a bite of the dessert that was handed over, and then froze. And Vivi, who was holding a spoon, was blushing and at a loss. The hand holding the spoon was firmly grasped by Nami, not sure if he should pull it back. How is it? Does Vivi taste good? Nami, who was still holding Vivi's hand to prevent her from pulling it back, looked at Luffy, who was there with a playful expression. Nami, you. What are you doing? Holding Nami's hand and staring straight at Luffy, Vivi felt dizzy and didn't know what to do. Looking at the red-faced Vivi and the playful smile of Nami, Luffy came back to his senses and calmly retracted his head. Delicious. Now that Nami has expressed it to this point, Luffy is no longer entangled. On the other hand, Vivi, caught between the two, was already dizzy, and she couldn't feel some kind of tacit understanding between the two. Ah, bastard Luffy, what are you doing, my princess Vivi? Sanji, who was still fighting with Zoro, seemed to be triggered by an alarm, and immediately turned his gaze to Luffy. However, as soon as he looked over there, he saw Nami grabbing Vivi's hand and feeding a spoonful of dessert into Luffy's mouth, who turned back. Vivi, who was awakened by Sanji's loud roar, suddenly burst out of Nami's hand. Then he glanced at Luffy, then at Nami, and ran towards Nami's room with a flushed face. Damn it, that bastard Luffy, it's not enough to have Nami, and he even reached out to Princess Vivi. Seeing Vivi running away with a blushing face, Sanji gritted his teeth and pinched Zoro even harder. You bastard curls your eyebrows, chef, I'll be fine if you push harder. Zoro, who clearly felt Sanji's strength unwittingly increased, immediately yelled at Sanji with pointed teeth. Huh. What is that? After a day's voyage, with Vivi's confirmation, the Mary has entered the waters of Alabasta. After what happened yesterday, Vivi is still a little afraid to face Luffy. Just came out to confirm when the Mary entered the Alabasta waters, and stayed in May's room at other times. This also made Sanji glared at Luffy whenever he saw Luffy, and he had a tendency to fight Luffy. However, because of Zoro's relationship, every time Sanji wants to get in trouble with Luffy, he will be ridiculed by Zoro. Then Sanji, who was supposed to be fighting Luffy, is fighting Zoro. However, although Vivi did not dare to face Luffy, the relationship with Nami did not become estranged because of this, and the two had a tendency to become more intimate. It's nothing, just ordinary water vapor. While Vivi stayed in the room, Nami was no different than usual. But every time I look at Luffy, there is a little bit of resentment. Although yesterday's initiator was Nami, it is clear that Nami is not as open-minded as he has shown. Water vapor. Looking at the large fog in front of the Mary, Chopper was puzzled why there was so much water vapor in this sea. It's the underwater volcano. There should be volcanoes under the sea in that area. For the little reindeer's question, Nami answered patiently. After all, as a newcomer, Nami's endurance is still very high. Will there also be volcanoes under the sea? Chopper continued to ask questions with a persevering spirit, and there was quite a tendency to break the casserole and ask questions to the end. Yes, there are more volcanoes on the seabed than on the ground. Nami made full use of her rather profound knowledge of physics. A few thousand years from this place, or a few 10,000 years, a new island will be born. Hey, Chopper, forget about that, it doesn't matter, come fishing with me. Usopp, who was sitting on the edge of the boat, held a fishing rod, and next to him sat Gartino and Vivi's Karoo, who were fishing quite leisurely with a duck. Usopp watched Chopper want to continue asking, and immediately interrupted his question. Nami, you are amazing. Before Chopper could answer Usopp's words, Sanji, who was next to him, became mad at Nami. Fishing. Here I come. On this ship, Usopp is the most friendly to Chopper. After all, Usopp's big words are really effective for a simple Chopper. Therefore, when Usopp called Chopper to go fishing, Chopper immediately agreed happily. I completely forgot my original intention of continuing to seek answers. Captain Luffy, there seems to be a boat approaching across from the water vapor, but the fog is so thick that some can't see who the other party is. While the few people on the deck were chatting without a word, Makita on the observation deck suddenly shouted to Luffy. Hearing Makita's report, Luffy immediately thought of who the owner of the ship was. Senior agent of the Baroque Works, Mr. 2, Von Cry. Although the opponent's clone fruit is a good ability, but Luffy has absolutely no idea of AA letting him on board, there is no special reason, it is simply because of disgust. But Luffy didn't have the idea of AA killing the other party, but this time he couldn't let him touch the looks of the people on the boat. Everyone, pay attention, it's about to enter the thick fog, all cheer up, don't get the wrong direction. Just as the Mary was about to enter the water vapor area, Nami loudly reminded several people on the deck. After all, it's on the Grand Line, so don't be careless at all. Otherwise, after coming out of this water vapor area, you will find that the boat has turned around and returned to the place where the water vapor was entered before, wasting time. As for the ship on the opposite side of the water vapor area, Nami didn't care. Even if the other party was a pirate ship and Luffy was here, he didn't need to worry about it. Soon, under Nami's command, the ship came out of the other side of the steam safely. Ah. Who are you? Just regaining sight from the vapor barrier, a strange person appeared in front of Usopp and Chopper. And Gal Tino, who was sitting next to Usopp and fishing with Usopp, put on a fighting stance the first time he saw each other. Mr. 2. Looking at the man who was caught by Usopp and Chopper's fishing line, Gal Tino directly called out his identity. Moreover, when he saw Mr. 2 wearing a swan skirt and a shemale makeup on his face, Gal Tino knew why the other party appeared here. Although the other party's appearance on the Mary was purely accidental, but the other party's ship appeared on the route of Alabasta, so his purpose can be imagined. Solve yourself in Miss Golden Week when the mission failed. This is the way of doing things in the Baroque Work Club. As early as Sanji said that he received a phone call from Mr. Zero, Gal Tino had expected such a situation. This is also the reason why he did not leave the Straw Hat pirate ship immediately. Startled by Gal Tino's loud shout, Usopp, who quickly reacted, wanted to throw the man on the fishing rod into the sea. But because Chopper just joined, he didn't know about the Baroque Work Club, so he didn't cooperate with Usopp's actions. This also resulted in Usopp not being able to throw the caught shemale into the sea. And Mr. 2 Von Clay, who also woke up under Gardino's shouting, took this opportunity to quickly break free from the fishing line. Then jumped on the Mary with fishing line. It was delivered straight to the door. Mr. 3, Miss Golden Week. Von Clay, who stood firm, saw Gal Tino and Mariano clearly on the boat, but he didn't make the first move. Damn it. You were actually saved by this guy. Damn it. If I kill you now, wouldn't it be revenge? For Von Cry, the way of the shemale does not allow himself to do such a thing. But if Mr. Zero's order is not fulfilled, he may be the one to be hunted down next time. For a time, the shemale agent who did not see the situation clearly fell into a self-entanglement. Captain Luffy, this person is Mr. 2 of the Baroque Works. As a senior agent of the Baroque Work Club, Makita has naturally seen Mr. Point 2. But now that she has officially joined the Straw Hat Pirates, she immediately told Luffy the identity of Mr. Point 2. Huh? Miss Valentine, are you here too? Von Cry, who was still struggling, immediately raised his head after hearing the familiar voice from the observation deck.